Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Sharlin.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross. Mr. Lavelle.
Here.
Mr. Mosley. Ms. Kel-Smith. Ms. Warwick. Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, I'm here too.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern or official action before City Council. Profanity will not be permitted. After you recall, please restate your name, provide your neighborhood for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Lori Fitzgerald.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Lori Fitzgerald. I'm from the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. I am on the board of the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition. I'm an architect and I'm the chair of our Built Environment Committee. So I'm returning today to speak about the legislation involving the registered community organizations that I spoke to the last month, which I understand has been tabled until today. I wanted to just reaffirm previous testimony that our organization as an RCO believes that the RCO process does deserve re-examination. We're in favor of reconsidering how the process works to make it more efficient and effective. Absolutely in favor of that. We are in favor of the Department of City Planning taking over more of the responsibility of the logistics of that in order to make that more equitable across all communities, especially as those that don't have an RCO. Also wanted to reaffirm that the RCOs, we do firmly believe that the RCO should continue to have a role in the process. Our RCO acts as a liaison. We're the largest neighborhood in the city. We have several development activities meetings per year, and we build a bridge between the city and neighborhood. We establish a relationship with the developer, build that trust, start to share information that we know about the neighborhood. So we really feel like that's an important role. And I understand that not every community has that community organization, but we feel that that serves an important purpose. We also feel that we can help the city by determining which issues are elevated to the cities or which processes actually get more attention. I know that Teresa Kel-Smith in proposing the legislation talked about wanting it to be more effectively catching issues. We recently had a process that came through where it was very low attendance on the first development activities meeting, and I was the one that asked for a second one so that we could get a broader support. So I think that process is something where we know which issues and areas are hot buttons, so we try to elevate those. Our objection to the legislation has more to do with that we need time as a registered community organization to fully understand this. I'm hopeful that there would be a community meeting or public meeting the way that Councilman Smith had suggested. So we want an opportunity to just understand it in a more thorough way. At the moment, our board has only had one conversation about it just last night because of the occurrence of our regular meetings. So we've not had a chance to give it full thought or get full clarity on it. And I also wanted to mention that at the moment, our board objects to the clause about the elections of boards because our organization has had that in the past and found it to be somewhat problematic and more of a popularity contest. Again, we would want to understand that and fully clarify that, but we, at the moment, object to that. So kind of a mix of objection and in favor. Wanted to explain all of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller, who is not online and is not with us. Therefore, our next speaker is Ellen Dent. Okay, thank you. That means our last registered speaker is Ikahana Halmalkina.
Greetings and good day. My title is Chief Ikahana Halmalkina and the grandson of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American people. With respect to RCOs, I guess I could just simply say there is a no respect, because there is no respect for the people's voice in RCOs. It is a popularity contest, and it will remain as such until RCOs are dismantled. At first glance, it appears that RCOs are effective because you get the most vocal people gathered together to speak about some issues, but then you leave out the rest of the population's insight and input on any particular matter in regards to how the funds are used or development happens in the city of Pittsburgh. So I am not in favor of RCOs, and RCOs do not give a good picture of how the city should progress or move forward on any given matter. So I vote down RCOs being in existence and giving the power back to the people.
Yeah.
With the rest of my time, I would like to speak about identity. It is on my honor, with conviction from the very noble warrior ancestors to whom I serve, to protect their legacy and sacred traditions. I give honor, respect, and a wealth of gratitude and appreciation for your unwavering, non-compromising, unfiltered wisdom. Thank you in advance for the courage to speak the truth to perceived power, to be unapologetic about who we are and where we come from. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak and provide public comment, please come forward at this time. Also provide your name and neighborhood for the record. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. That's in the high-rise, Kaylee Irvis Tires high-rise up on Bedford Avenue. Yesterday I spoke and I had a sign about Austin Whitesell. I said about him having a survey, and I thought that his mother was just teaching him that you can have an opinion and you can also consider what the other people are speaking about too. But I also wanted to speak because I would be remiss not to say something about the mother. The mother had bags that she takes and gives to the homeless. There were soap, deodorant, different things that she did. I took a couple of the bags because, you know, as I walk through, I do try to give the homeless something if I have something. Now, I also wanted gents to look at my sign. You know I've had it for years. But on the sign, you have there where August Wilson says to pick up the ball. Go back and pick up the ball. And I think that means that we are to come down and speak to you any problems that we have. August Wilson told me to come and tell you what our problems are. What we were saying, because otherwise, whatever you say is history. What you're saying. I want you to understand, I come down here because we're in a bad, bad situation with the president that we have, and also this council. And the reason why I say this to you, council, and I want every one of you to listen and listen good. The politicians that we had from years ago, you know, I've been coming down here over 20-something years to city council. Before the school board, I was going over there. Those politicians, you could shame them. You could tell them, I'm going to say, and they would be shamed. But gents don't. Gents don't have that kind of shame. You don't even have that the gumption to think that we can tell you what we need where we live at. You don't come in our neighborhoods, and the old politicians would come when it was election time. The old politicians even had where they gave meals to the homeless men up on Taneyfield Street. There was a whole big, I remember seeing it, a big, big building and men hanging out, mostly white men, and they were homeless. But when it came to election time, they fed them men because they also gave them $25 for voting. Because my father, he didn't dress up too much. And on election day, he'd get dressed. And I say, Harry, because I wasn't raised with my father. I called him Harry, but I still loved him. I said, Harry, you selling your vote? He said, no. He said, I vote for whoever I want. He said, I just go out and say, yeah, Bill got it. Like he voted for him. So I've seen better
Thank
council people than Jens, and you need to know
Thank
it.
you very much. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Seeing no further speakers, we'll turn to our standing committee agenda. Beginning with the Finance and Law Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Strasburger, we have one deferred paper, Bill 2109.
Ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title I Administrative, Article 9, Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Chapter 178E, Registered Community Organizations by updating standards and responsibilities.
May we have a
Motion
motion?
to approve.
Second. With discussion, Councilman Warwick?
I'd like to, so we have a meeting on December 1st with all of the, or just a phone call where we're inviting all the RCOs. City Planning will explain their amendments, and we'll just get feedback from the RCOs. And then I believe Councilwoman Smith called for a public hearing, if I'm not mistaken. I think she did, right? Yes, so with that, I guess I'd like to motion to hold for 3 weeks so that we can do that outreach.
Second.
For 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. Seconded, and with discussion, that's how Councilman.
Yeah, I just want to know if we're ever going to get briefed on this, if the council members themselves will ever get briefed. We've been briefed on the vending, 17 times. Nobody's talked to us about what's going to happen with RCOs.
Okay.
I mean, if we can pass that message along to the other side of the hall and the planning department.
I will work to schedule a briefing for all members on this ordinance.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any further discussion? All those in favor of a 3-week hold, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill 2109 will be held 3 weeks. That takes us to Bill 2435.
Resolution providing for the sale of certain property acquired by the City of Pittsburgh at tax sales, items A through AA. 1703 Cliff Street, District 6, 1707 Cliff Street, District 6, 2814 Bedford Avenue, District 6, 5218 Rosetta Street, District 9, 0 Fram Street, District 9, 0 Hell Street, District 9, 0 Durham Street, District 9, 8366 Bryceland Street, District 9, 8373 Vedette Street, District 9, 4640 Chatsworth Street, District 5, 0 Winston Street, District 5, 11 Muskego Way, District 2, 0 Boggs Avenue, District 2, 1230 Crucible Street, District 2, 904 Valonia Street, District 2, 807 Lorenz Avenue, District 2, 3124 Sutherland Street, District 2, 841 Levitt Way, District 1, 909 Morrison Street, District 6, 0 Boyle Street, District 6, 4136 Franklin Road, District 1, 2344 California Avenue, District 1, and 2348 California Avenue, District 1.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to our new papers, beginning with 2450.
Resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Tatiana McCosco in an amount not to exceed $5,090 over 1 year in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to her property on Beechwood Boulevard from a felled city tree on July 11, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Next is Bill 2451, and Madam Clerk, if you would read Bill 2451 through 2466 altogether. These were our annual budget authorization bills that all need to be held for a public hearing.
Bill 2451, resolution authorizing the City of Pittsburgh to participate in applicable cooperative purchasing agreements for goods, materials, equipment, supplies, services, or construction as authorized by the Commonwealth Procurement Code and the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Law for the 2026 fiscal year. 2452, Resolution providing for the letting of contracts and for the use of existing contracts for the purchase of materials, supplies, and equipment for city departments and the maintenance, repair, rental, and/or leasing, rehabilitation, renovation, inspection, or servicing of city buildings and facilities, and for any miscellaneous services in and for any city departments, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof for the 2026 fiscal year. Bill 2453, resolution adopting and approving the 2026 capital budget, the proposed 2026 community development program, and the 2026 through 2031 capital improvement program. 2454, resolution making appropriations to pay the expenses of conducting the public business of the city of Pittsburgh and for meeting the debt charges thereof for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2026. Bill 2455, resolution fixing the number of officers and employees of the city of Pittsburgh for the 2026 fiscal year and the rate of compensation thereof, and setting maximum levels for designated positions. Bill 2456, resolution authorizing city council to approve intra-departmental transfers throughout the 2026 fiscal year. Bill 2457, resolution authorizing appropriations and salaries of the Stop the Violence Fund for the 2026 fiscal year beginning January 1, 2026. Bill 2458, resolution authorizing appropriations, salaries, and capital expenditures of the Parks Trust Fund for the 2026 fiscal year beginning January 1, 2026. Bill 2459, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Office of Management and Budget to enter into an agreement or agreements with the URA of Pittsburgh for the administration of certain 2026 PAYGO-funded projects and programs, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $675,000. Bill 2460, resolution authorizing the city controller to accept updated financial system account strings and pay invoices for those contracts whose funding sources shifted from the Office of the Mayor into the Office of Equal Protection in the 2026 operating budget and 5-year plan. And Bill 2461, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title II, Fiscal, Article 7, Business-Related Taxes, Chapter 245, Earned Income Tax, Section 24503, Declaration and Payment of Tax at subsection D, so as to fix the rate of interest on delinquent earned income tax for the year 2026. Bill 2462, resolution authorizing all city departments in conjunction with the Department of Finance to enter on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh into a facilities usage agreement or agreements during the 2026 calendar year for the purpose of permitting groups to rent city-owned facilities for recreational and community-focused activities in individual amounts not to exceed $10,000. Bill 2463, resolution authorizing the fee schedule for 2026 pursuant to Chapter 170 of the City Code. Bill 2464, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title II, Fiscal, Article 7, Business-Related Taxes, Chapter 246, Home Rule Tax, Section 24603, Declaration and Payment of Tax at subsection D, so as to fix the rate of interest on delinquent home rule tax for the year 2026. Bill 2465, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title II, Fiscal, Article 9, Property Taxes, Chapter 263, Real Property Tax and Exemption, Section 26302, Payment Options, Discount and Delinquency Penalty, so as to set the payment, discount, and delinquent dates for the 2026 fiscal year. And Bill 2466, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title II, Fiscal, Article 9, Property Taxes, Chapter 263, Real Property Tax and Exemption, by fixing the rate of real estate taxation for 2026.
Motion to hold for cablecast public hearing on all
Second.
bills.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All bills will be held for a cablecast public hearing. That takes us to invoices. Need a motion?
1 second.
Motion to approve.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices have been approved. That takes us to interdepartmental transfers. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Interdepartmental transfers have been approved. That takes us to P cards. Need a motion?
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second.
Second discussion, Councilwoman
Thank you.
Smith.
Thank you. I'm actually asking for a colleague. They pointed out that under OMB in 412 Justice, that's for a consultation, and consultations aren't covered under P cards. Do we have an attorney that looks over these? Don't we have somebody that we're paying to look over all these? Before the agenda hits, I asked this once before.
Yes, we do review these before they hit our table.
And an attorney signs off on it. Well, she's not an attorney yet, right?
Well, not a formal attorney, but
So
yes,
I don't know if that means
they are
anything.
reviewed.
So anyway, so I have questions about that one.
Okay.
So maybe we should strike that until we get some clarity?
We
Wanna do that?
we can certainly make a motion to strike it.
Okay, motion to strike OMBs in 412 Justice until we get some further clarification for $3,500.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those two items have been stricken. Any further discussion on P cards?
No, just can we please make sure we get some clarification? Is that allowed? That's all.
We'll do.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of the passage of the P cards say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? P cards have been approved. That moves us to our new papers. Bill 2468.
Resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for purpose of inspecting all highway tunnels located on public roads that are fully or partially within the state's boundaries at no cost to the city.
Second?
Second.
Second?
Second.
The amendment is before all members. It has been motioned and second. Any discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I can't see everyone. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yes, there's been a motion to amend Bill 2468. It has been seconded.
So it's an agreement with PennDOT to inspect tunnels that we own.
Any further discussion, Councilman Gross?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, just a little background. I'm sure that this sounds like a good idea, but have we not ever had PennDOT inspect our tunnels that we own? Which tunnels do we own? And how have they been inspected heretofore? A little context would be helpful.
Sure. Introduce yourself for the record.
Hello, Eric Sessler, Chief Engineer in the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. Okay, so this is an agreement that PennDOT has provided to us and asked us to sign dealing with inspections of tunnels. There's national tunnel inspection standards similar to how there are national bridge inspection standards. We own two tunnels. One is the Corliss Tunnel. The other one is actually the 579 Cap, which is classified as a tunnel because the road goes under it and not over it. This really just formalizes things that we're already doing. Both of those tunnels are inspected as part of our bridge inspection agreement with PennDOT. So nothing practical is changing. This is just formalizing, kind of a relationship between PennDOT and the city, clarifying that because we own the tunnel, it is our job to inspect it, and it's their job to make sure we inspect it.
Okay, thank you. So it's not, you said it's not actually changing the way work is getting done. And so currently we are inspecting it, and we're going to continue to be inspecting it. But now we are kind of memorializing in a separate agreement that PennDOT's going to make sure that we do inspect it. Did I follow that?
Correct. The actual inspection will continue the way it always has. This is just formalizing the understanding between PennDOT and the city that it is our responsibility to own, operate, and maintain and inspect the tunnels that we own.
Great. And so, and these tunnels right now, are they under the asset commission that is a joint commission of the administration and council that has been doing bridges and other assets? Has that always included tunnels in the last few years we've had it?
It has. Since we only have 2 tunnels and since the standards for inspection and management are very similar to bridges, we really do just manage them as part of our bridge inventory.
Okay, great. So then all that information is being kind of consolidated and reported out as the result of the work of that commission.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While you're here, so obviously the cap, a couple years old, it shouldn't be any issues with that infrastructure. But the Corliss Tunnel, I thought that we kind of revamped that recently. Did that include, looking at it structurally and reinforcing it, or what was done there?
So we have not.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Armstrong. That was redone.
Armstrong is the county's tunnel, and they just completed a very large project.
Corliss is in Councilwoman Kell Smith's. Comes out at Station Square.
Right, out West Carson Street a little bit.
Right.
And we actually, the tunnel is still okay. It is getting time for a project.
Mm-hmm.
We have some money on the next tip to start a project. It's been out there for a bit. It's gotten pushed a couple years, but I would say later next year we expect to be starting like the agreement process to get a rehabilitation project going for that tunnel.
Right. And PRT are the only.
They don't use that one.
PRT doesn't. They don't.
No, so they have the transit tunnel that comes right in at Station Square. That's there.
Okay,
they own that one.
Yeah.
The Corliss Street tunnel is out further on West Carson.
Oh.
Yeah, and that one
I'm
that
thinking
was
of
just a
Wabash.
road tunnel.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay. I got to get my tunnel straight. But okay, Corliss, I know where it's at. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sure.
I'm trying to envision where Corliss is.
Yeah.
What education partnership is?
Oh, okay. Got you.
It's a nice little tunnel.
Yeah.
It's redone.
Yeah. Where the Comcast used to be? Yeah. Okay.
It's called Corliss?
Yeah.
We're talking about tunnel.
I know you know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you know that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, right now we're on the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any further discussion on the bill as amended?
I just want to thank Councilwoman Warwick and you for your work on this, Domi. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill 2468, affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Bill 2469.
Resolution providing for an agreement with STV Inc. for costs associated with preliminary engineering for the Bloomfield Bridge project, providing for the payment of the costs thereof not to exceed $674,192.87, reimbursable at 100%.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion?
Oh,
Councilwoman Gross?
Magically appeared. Thank you all. So the Bloomfield Bridge project, can you kind of bring us up to date? Because there's 2 things happening, right? There's like the maintenance that's happening on the actual bridge, and people might note that some of the lanes have been closed, and it's kind of like without much notice, so that really backs things up on Bigelow. But then there's also the traffic calming, kind of slow moving project that's going to happen someday, reorganizing the intersection. So which one are we looking at here?
Yeah. So this bill is to allow us to start a project for the actual bridge itself, to do preservation work on the bridge. Folks probably know this bridge was built in the 80s, I believe. So overall, it's in relatively good condition. This is a project to keep it in good condition. We've been doing a little maintenance work right now. We've been replacing the seals in the expansion dams, which is why there's been some lane closures. And that's even, maintenance work that even though this project's coming up, we're still, probably a good 3 years out from construction. So trying to prevent water from draining down onto the bottom for another 3 years. So that's the maintenance work that's happening right now. And this is, we're coordinating with the intersection realignment project, but they are independent projects. But of course, we're both managing them. So we're making sure they work together.
Great. We relayed some reports of spalling on some of the concrete supports that are on the Polish Hill side. And I know that since we now have a bridge inspector in-house or an engineer, maybe you can clarify what that is. Like someone went out that very same afternoon to check it out. But it still looks distressing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So as you mentioned, there are some concrete spalls, particularly on the pier on the Polish Hill side. Mm-hmm. We are keeping an eye on them. We're doing more frequent inspections of that. That will be repaired as part of this bigger project. We have done some work to make sure that there's not actually like loose concrete that's in danger of falling on someone. And this expansion dam work, sealing up the expansion dams, that's the reason that concrete is spalling, because this salt water has been draining down on there for years. So kind of have a multi-pronged approach here. As far as staff, your question on staff, we do have, we have, I don't recall exactly who went out to look at it, but, several of our engineering and project management staff do get out quite a bit. We also, of course, have our bridge maintenance supervisor as part of the new bridge maintenance division that's been set up over the last couple of years. So all of them working together are able to get eyes on this stuff, pretty quickly when needed.
So yeah, just to reiterate, so we actually do have a bridge maintenance division.
We do.
We didn't used to.
We do. It is. It's been set up over the last 4 years since the bridge collapse, and I'm happy to say as of last month, the bridge division is fully staffed, and they're out doing stuff on a daily basis.
That is great news, and I appreciate the updates. And I just wanted to make sure that people understand that our bridge maintenance division says that the Bloomfield Bridge is in good shape, and we are doing the work to keep it in good shape. That's what I heard.
That's correct.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, Councilman Wilson, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to take this opportunity to ask about two things. One is to say the word snooper, and then the other one is to ask about the Swindell Bridge. So I saw 2 snooper trucks on
which bridge?
On the Swindell.
Okay. So that's...
So can you explain what a snooper truck is first?
Sure. It's a fun name for a truck, but
yeah, that's fine.
A snooper truck it's a vehicle that we usually use for inspection. The truck has a boom like a boom truck, but the boom actually bends down and goes under the bridge, so you can, I guess, snoop down there. That's why I got the nickname. We use those quite a bit for bridge inspection for the higher structures where you need to get under them. That's the equipment owned by contractors that do the work for us. We don't own one of those ourselves. They're pretty expensive pieces of equipment, and they cost a lot to maintain. So there was an inspection being done recently on Swindell, which is why you saw that. And sorry, I forgot. Was there another part to your question? We're keeping a close eye on it.
Right.
Obviously, that when we have the project coming up, there's some maintenance we'll be doing over the next couple of years to get us to the project, but we're keeping.
Just reminds me to ask you about it, so I'll follow up with you after the meeting. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say, oh, sorry, Councilman Coghill.
So our bridge inspectors inspect just city bridges or all bridges?
So some bridge inspectors are inspecting all bridges. Okay. Our city-owned bridges get inspected in 2 ways. The ones that are over 20 feet in length and carry vehicles qualify for like the national, the NBIS that we talk about, the federal standards. PennDOT manages an inspection contract on our behalf to make sure those bridges get inspected.
Do we pay PennDOT to hire somebody to inspect those bridges?
We pay 20% of the cost, and the feds pay 80% of the cost. Okay. So that's one contract. And then other bridges that are either under 20 feet in length or like pedestrian bridges and those kinds of bridges, those don't fall under that program. So we have the responsibility ourselves to inspect those, and we hire engineers through the ITQ contracts that we have to do those inspections, and those are fully funded by city dollars.
Okay, so our inspectors are not inspecting county, state bridges.
No, there are separate contracts that are not
Got it.
ours for those.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to Human Resources Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Sharlin. One new paper, Bill 2447.
Resolution amending Resolution 93 of 2025, providing that the City of Pittsburgh enter into a professional services agreement and/or contract with consultants and/or service providers for professional services in connection with civil service and MPO ETC, require assessment and evaluation of public safety candidates, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof. This will extend the term for 2 years and increasing the not-to-exceed amount by $190,000 for a new not-to-exceed amount of $285,000.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilman Wilson. We have one, our first new paper is Bill 2467.
Ordinance supplementing the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title IX, Zoning Code, Article 1, Introduction and Establishment, Chapter 902, Zoning Districts in General at Section 90201, Establishment of Zoning Districts, by adding a new specially planned district at subsection 90201D2 to be identified as SP 13, West End Trolley Trail Accessory Parking District, at Article 4, Planning Districts, Chapter 909, Planned Development Districts, Section 909.01 SP, Specially Planned District, by creating a new district to be identified as SP 13, West End Trolley Trail Accessory Parking District, including rules and regulations, and by amending the City of Pittsburgh zoning map by changing accessory parking standards in UI and LNC to SP 13, West End Trolley Trail Accessory Parking District, for property consisting of lots between Freewalt Street, the West End Trolley Trail Gateway, along McCartney Street, Green Tree Road, and portions of Wharton Street, Woodville Avenue, McKnight Street, and Wabash Street, as further identified in the attached map and in more detail within the bill below, all located in the 20th Ward.
Motion to hold 2 weeks.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The bill be held 2 weeks. That takes us to Bill 2470.
Bill 2470, resolution authorizing the mayor, the director of finance, and the director of the Office of Management and Budget to place a covenant upon Oliver Bath House as required by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, which provided funds for the Oliver Bath House rehabilitation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us to Innovation Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Gross. Our first new paper is Bill 2448.
Resolution amending Resolution 778 of 2024, authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements or amendments thereto with First Street Technology US LLC for a subscription to Risk Factor Database for all data and hazard layers for all perils and all parcels in the City of Pittsburgh, enabling support of city departments in planning for weather-related hazards by increasing the approved amount by $240,000 for a total cost not to exceed $285,000 over 5 years.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 2449.
Resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements or amendments thereto with City Program, a division of Brainy, for HIPAA, Protected Information Health Training and other training for IMP staff, cost not to exceed $12,000 over 3 years.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. And that takes us to our last committee, Intergovernmental Educational Affairs, chaired by Councilman Mosley. We have one deferred paper.
Bill 2220, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Finance on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a bill
just
or
asked
bills
Debbie if
of
he's coming
sale,
over.
assignment, and indenture with Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority doing business
said
as
Bill
Pittsburgh
Pickering's on
Water
his way.
for
I
leased
just asked him
property
like a minute ago.
pursuant to July 1995 capital lease agreement for a total amount not to exceed $1.
Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Mosley?
I believe we have the Deputy Mayor and Director Pickering here. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Introduce yourself.
Jake Pollack, Deputy Mayor and Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Will Pickering, Chief Executive Officer of Pittsburgh Water.
So the resolution before council today is authorization for the city to enter into bills of sale with Pittsburgh Water to complete the process of conveying formal ownership of the water and sewer and stormwater infrastructure of the city that was leased by the city of Pittsburgh to Pittsburgh Water in 1995 to Pittsburgh Water's ownership. That transfer is contemplated in the lease. The lease was a 30-year lease that concluded with an option for the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority to purchase for $1 that infrastructure at the termination of the lease. So those are the starting parameters under which this resolution begins. That's not the decision being made here. That was made with the original lease. The bill of sale that would be entered into as a result of the approval of this resolution, if it is approved, addresses a critical gap that has over the past 30 years become clear in the lease, which is it does not in a specific way articulate what actually constitutes the system. So the lease refers to the system, meaning the both facilities and pieces of infrastructure that constitute the water and sewer infrastructure. It doesn't describe that in great detail, however, and it has, over the course of the last 30 years, as many council members, I think, have firsthand experience with, produced a great deal of confusion and frustration and even dispute between the city and the authority as to what is owned by which entity. There have been numerous methods that those disputes have attempted to be resolved with over the years, looking at original as-built drawings for components of the infrastructure, looking at the city's records of when certain pieces of infrastructure were accepted by the city, as well as endeavors in some of the cooperation agreements that have existed between the city and Pittsburgh Water over the years to set parameters, but it's never been conclusively determined. So understanding that Pittsburgh Water has a right, as established by the lease, to purchase the system, we felt it was necessary, both agencies, the city and the authority, to clearly establish the boundaries between the two. What is part of the system and thus part of the sale? What remains city property? And so for over the past year, a combination of lawyers representing both entities as well as technical staff, engineers representing the authority, representatives of DOMI and the Department of Public Works here. Ultimately, Director Pickering and myself led the two negotiating teams through that process, reached an agreement as to how we would establish the metes and bounds of the system so that can be clearly documented in the bill of sale and thus no longer be a source of controversy or misunderstanding between the two entities. The agreement accomplishes that. It conveys to Pittsburgh Water their major facilities, so the buildings that house the equipment at the drinking water treatment plant, for example, which is a pretty obvious example, as well as the facilities that house pump stations or that they use to dispatch operational staff, as well as the overwhelming majority of the underground pipes and sewer structures that convey either drinking water or sewage through the city. It does become more complicated, and thus why this exercise was necessary when we look at infrastructure running through city-owned land. And really there are two categories of city-owned land. There's three actually. There are the parcels that the city owns and has facilities on. So think about the parcel that this building sits on. Thankfully, there are no major water lines or sewer lines under this building. But so we have those kinds. We have parks, which are a different category of asset, and then we have the right-of-way. Essentially, everything in the right-of-way is being conveyed to Pittsburgh Water, with the exception of a limited number of instances where we have clear documentation that the infrastructure was not accepted when it was constructed. In parks, we've reached an agreement on under what conditions something would remain city property, and under what conditions it's conveyed to Pittsburgh Water. And in facilities, there are limited examples where there might be infrastructure running under a building or under a parcel. So those are the primary objectives of the bill of sale, consistent with the amendment to the Home Rule Charter that was adopted by the voters earlier this year. The bill of sale includes clear provisions that Pittsburgh Water cannot sell any portion of the system to a subsequent owner, a private owner. That if in any instance where Pittsburgh Water would contemplate that, the city of Pittsburgh has the right to reclaim ownership, and that in the event of the dissolution of Pittsburgh Water as an entity, that the city would absorb ownership, would reclaim ownership of the infrastructure and all associated debts. There are limited exceptions that allow Pittsburgh Water to sell equipment or facilities that are no longer part of the active administration of the system. So, for example, if they no longer need a building, it's taken out of the sort of operation of the system. There are a few parcels that they own with very small sewer pumps in them that may eventually become redundant. Once it's sort of decommissioned, that could be sold, but at no point anything that's serving a function for the provision of drinking water or sewer services can be disposed of. So in a nutshell, that's what is before you all today, is the instrument that allows us to culminate that process.
Sure. Now thinking to the last portion of your presentation, you spoke to the question I'm about to ask, but I'm going to ask you to elaborate more. Like what, further assurances that you can provide to the public, those who obviously voted overwhelmingly, in support of ensuring that, Pittsburgh Water and the infrastructure and the entire system remains public. What other assurances beyond, what you just shared, and what, in your own words, can you say to the public, for those who are concerned, some who are in the gallery today, but
sure,
some who came yesterday to the public hearing, who are incredibly concerned about, losing this as a public asset?
Yeah, so I think I would answer that question in several ways. One is that whether owned by the city of Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh Water, it remains publicly owned, as Pittsburgh Water similarly is a public entity. The Home Rule Charter is now clear, right, that such a sale to a public entity, to a private entity is prohibited, and as a result, the city is administration, or any city government is prohibited from entering into any agreement that would allow the sale to a private owner to take place, which is one of the reasons why it is necessary to be included in this bill of sale, right? And why we negotiated to ensure that it was in there. And I should say, when I say negotiated, that faced no opposition from Pittsburgh Water. We simply had to agree to the exact language by which it was referred to. There's no, in many ways, this bill of sale gives formal legal definition to the intent that's expressed in the charter, right? Because to move in some future date to a sale of the system or any portion of the system to a private entity would now become a violation of this contractual agreement. So this is the mechanism by which the desire expressed in the charter is made binding on Pittsburgh Water through this sale agreement.
And I think my only other question before we open it up to other members is there any provisions where there's ability to enter into a lease agreement, with the outside operator, or is it the provisions that prevent a sale? Does that also involve a potential lease operating agreement as well?
So this bill of sale would not allow the assets to be conveyed or leased to a third party. On the question of operator agreement, I would just point out that in the previous instance where that occurred under the terms of the lease. So Pittsburgh Water did not own the assets at that time, and that was still a legally permissible act, right? So nothing in this transaction changes one way or the other the potential for that to occur. I think that everyone agrees that arrangement, when it was done, over 10 years ago, resulted in bad outcomes for residents, and I think that folks are rightly concerned about any future such engagement. I think that Pittsburgh Water's leadership and board would agree with that, and I think that it's my understanding that some may be exploring additional regulation to prohibit that type of arrangement in the future. I think that that's advisable. This transaction in and of itself doesn't address that question one way or the other, nor is it really the proper instrument to address that question. That doesn't mean the question shouldn't be addressed. This deals with the ownership, not with what kind of management business relationships the authority can enter into. Ultimately, the authority or the basis for that kind of governance decision making runs through the appointment of board members and their perspectives on that question.
Yeah, thank you for your time. That exhausts my questions, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. I have Councilman Sharlin, followed by Councilman Strasburger, then Councilman Coghill, then Councilwoman Smith. Councilman Sharlin?
Yes, thank you, Council President. All I want to do is cast eye on this bill, and thank you. I apologize, I have to step out here.
Thank you. Councilman Sharlin cast an aye vote for the record. Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and apologies for not being able to be there in person today. I simply wanted to ask the guests joining us at the table today, if there is, I guess I wanted to reiterate what was already asked by Councilman Mosley. Is there anything in this transfer or this agreement that has, my understanding, already been agreed upon? This is just sort of the final stages of a 30-year agreement to understand what the system actually is and to complete the transfer. First of all, is there anything in it that would open the door to potential privatization, either by us not completing the agreement or the transfer somehow? And I'm wondering if council has what power council even really has here to impact anything having to do with this, or is it an agreement that occurred 30 years ago that we're just simply completing? If someone could sort of clarify that for the public's sake and for my sake as well.
I'll answer the questions just in reverse order. As relates to the authority here, we negotiated the bill of sale within the confines of the terms of the lease, which granted leaseholder rights to the asset for 30 years and then provided a option to purchase, right? So it is my understanding and the advice of the lawyers that we've spoken to that Pittsburgh Water is the entity that has the sole authority to determine whether they want to exercise their option to purchase, and that the city does not have a role in approving, in saying yes or no to that exercise of the option. that decision was made effectively legally with the original lease. So operating within those parameters, we negotiated a bill of sale that articulated what was being purchased. It's not, I do not believe that we can say no, we can simply say on what terms the transaction occurs, because the approval for the sale occurred with the adoption of the original lease. To your question about privatization, I don't believe that either approval or rejection of the bill of sale increases the risks of privatization. I would say that the bill of sale, by including clear references to the Home Rule Charter, makes it a contractual obligation of Pittsburgh Water to abide by those terms, and therefore carries the effect of the Home Rule Charter amendment into something that's contractually binding on them. I think that is a valuable protection of the asset for the long term, but the real challenge with not entering into the bill of sale comes from the continued ambiguity over what constitutes the asset. And that has negative operational consequences for both agencies, as the existence of that ambiguity for the past 30 years has demonstrated. So this clarity would be helpful and beneficial in a world in which the bill of sale is not entered into. Pittsburgh Water is in a position to tender $1 and will be the owner of the asset under the terms of the lease agreement, but without the clarity brought by the bill of sale over what they're exactly purchasing.
And I would just add, that's our understanding from Pittsburgh Water's perspective as well. There's nothing in the bill of sale and in the agreement that changes our governance, that changes our support for continued public operation and control of the system. And to Jake's point, this is an affirmation of the Home Rule Charter amendment that we supported. So the benefit is the clarity coming out of this agreement for those instances where we're sort of pointing fingers at one another of who owns which asset in what scenario, especially as it relates to city property. So that clarity is valuable for our customers, because often that ambiguity that he referenced means water lines leak for longer, and there's a perception of incompetence in government in addressing some issues within the system. So, but in terms of risks of privatization, if anything, those risks are diminished with this agreement, and there's certainly no new avenues that we've been aware of in thinking about this agreement sunsetting for several years on the Pittsburgh Water side of things.
Thank you. And I know from talking to some council members, there is as there always is with any kind of lease, any kind of big agreement, any kind of big contract, there is a desire for council members to exercise some level of control, or a debate within council as to how much control council should have over the language. Is there anything preventing either the administration, the city administration who's been working on this negotiation, the negotiation, the actual definition of what Pittsburgh Water will be acquiring, what is the system, or anyone on Pittsburgh Water's side, to showing council members the language of the lease?
Of the lease or of the bill of sale?
I'm sorry, the bill of sale.
Copies of the bill of sale were attached to the legislation when it was submitted. So we did file the final, when I say agreed to, meaning by the negotiating parties, those bills of sale were attached to the legislation and been part of the record since the legislation was introduced. I believe we've done this in previous instances, but I think we'd be happy to file the executed agreements with council as a communication to be read, received, and filed, so that can clarify that as well. But yeah, the bills of sale I saw them attached to the agenda for today's meeting.
Thank you. And so the executed agreement, I think, is what I want to home in on. Is from here, it's my understanding that should council approve this and both parties sign, there's a 30-day period by which the Pennsylvania Utility Commission must could take, up to 30 days to then recommend any further changes and send back. Is there an opportunity for us to see the executed agreement should any changes be made as well?
We both be open to that. The answer is yes, or at least from our perspective. And I'll let Will speak to the PUC process in a moment. But just to expound upon that point, the procedure would be the city and Pittsburgh Water sign the agreement. The agreement's filed with the Public Utility Commission. They have 30 days to review and either approve as written or make, I might be using the wrong term, but essentially I'll say make objections to its provisions. We would be perfectly comfortable with filing as a communication either their approval or any objections that they register, and then ultimately the city and Pittsburgh Water would have to agree to any modifications to the agreement resulting from PUC rejection. It would not be, those changes would not be incorporated automatically, and the city would have to sign again an amended document if that would be the case. It's our hope that their review will not result in any modifications. But Will, do you want to talk about
Yeah, I would agree. That's our understanding of the process. There is not a line item amendment or veto authority that the Public Utility Commission possesses. The process is typically, if they have questions, they send questions to Pittsburgh Water on clarifying terms. This is an agreement that I don't foresee a lot of conversation or controversy from the Public Utility Commission perspective, because it is not really changing our governance. It's not changing any of our financial obligations. As we transition from a leaseholder to an owner, our relationship with the Public Utility Commission and our customers remains unchanged. So if anything, I think they would be supportive of the level of detail that is spelled out in the transfer of defining the assets, as we've been talking about, what we're talking about in terms of the real property and other assets. So that clarity is something that they are aware of, as well as the expiration of the lease, but I do not foresee this being controversial. The 30-day review process is just a regulatory requirement that the Public Utility Commission has with utilities under their jurisdiction. Any municipal agreement that we sign, intermunicipal agreement, even our cost shares with DOMI, go to the Public Utility Commission for their review. It's sort of an unnecessary burden from my perspective, but one that we have to go through in terms of just because we're regulated by them. But I don't, as I said, I don't expect anything extraordinary here.
Thank you. And I'd like to speak to some of the topics that have been posed over the last couple of days, and I'll repeat a little bit of what I said at the post-agenda hearing a couple of days ago. I'm someone who cares deeply about continuing to keep our water and the management of our water and the ownership of our water public. I believe that Pittsburgh Water is a public authority, and by having our water infrastructure owned by it, it remains publicly owned and publicly managed. I do think that we need to guard against and continue to be very vigilant against the threat of privatization as other utilities seek to acquire smaller systems. I don't think that Pittsburgh Water is one of the systems that is currently the most vulnerable. I think the smaller, more rural, or more less financially stable water systems are the ones that are most at risk for privatization. But we must remain vigilant, and that is why, I would say that we have the Pittsburgh Water Board has always had a council member representing. The mayor will continue to nominate, and with council approval, new board members. It's our job to ask every potential board candidate, are you in favor of keeping our water publicly owned and managed, right? We should continue to do that. There's the Home Rule Charter that was fortunately passed. There are, my understanding, language within the agreement committing not only public water ownership, but also the fact that was brought up today that the city of Pittsburgh has essentially, and maybe I'm misspeaking and saying this exactly, but the first right of refusal to reacquire the water infrastructure should there be a question of ownership. I mean, so many protections in place. Are there others that I'm missing for those joining us, the guests joining us at the table, that you would say would further are further improvements from the pre-Veolia days that would demonstrate that we've learned the hard lessons and have really put in stopgaps to further for future privatization?
As relates to the proposed bill of sale, I think you've identified all of the protections, the primary one of which being clear language based in the Home Rule Charter Amendment that prohibits the sale of the infrastructure in whole or in part to a private third party. With respect to what we're specifically addressing today, that is the primary way in which that's addressed, and I think it's addressed in a way that is consistent with and furthers the objective of keeping the system public. I don't know, Will, if you want to add anything beyond outside necessarily the confines of the agreement itself.
Sure. Outside of the confines of the agreement before you is that in 2018 we did become placed under the oversight of the Public Utility Commission. So I will say at the outset, my involvement with Pittsburgh Water starting in 2016, even at times that were very challenging, I felt very strongly that it needed to remain a public asset, and we had the ability to turn the organization around, which we are far from perfect, but I believe we've demonstrated we can and have in many ways. The oversight of the Public Utility Commission, though, does mean if there were ever an instance where a sale would be contemplated, they would have to approve it and essentially greenlight that it is in the benefit of ratepayers, a sale. And there have been cases recently before the Public Utility Commission where private investor-owned utilities have not been able to make that case. That safeguard was not in place, prior to 2018. So if there were an entirely new leadership team and elected officials in this body, and there were to be, some contemplation of privatization, it still needs to meet that hump of PUC approval before any of the asset can be sold to a private operator. So that is the only one I would flag. Again, it's not anything that is before us right now, but it is an extra layer of safety that exists under our oversight structure.
Thank you. That exhausts my questions, Mr. Chair. I intend to vote aye today, but I'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Cargill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome. Well, I wanted to add, the other day when you were here, you left earlier, but when I took office 8 years ago, I was not so confident with PWSA and the operations in PWSA, but I just wanted to tell you personally, I think you've done a great job. I think you've steadied the ship there, and what you've done with the lead line replacement and other things like that, couldn't be more confident now. So congratulations and good job over the last, I don't know how many years you've been the director now?
I've been leading for 5.5.
5.5.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Been a great team effort.
No, absolutely. So, okay, so I guess my question is, what does this mean to us? Is there a responsibility, a financial responsibility that we won't have, or does nothing change, basically?
It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the financial responsibilities of the city, which are relatively, I shouldn't say limited. It doesn't change them. Today, the city owns the asset, but leases it to Pittsburgh Water, and Pittsburgh Water assumes most of the liabilities for the system under the terms of that lease. The instance under the lease where the city would have a financial responsibility is if Pittsburgh Water were to be dissolved or were to become insolvent in a way that meant it couldn't pay its debts, then as the owner, the city would be the backstop to that liability. In the same way here, the city is obligating itself in the instance of the dissolution of Pittsburgh Water to reassume ownership and assume any debts of the authority. So that doesn't change, and that is customary for when the city would establish an authority for the purposes of managing something, with whether it's through ownership or lease. So we have a similar relationship to the parking authority, for example, whether they own or they lease their facilities. If for some reason they were to fold up shop, we would reassume their assets, and that would include their debts, because that's right. Essential to these agencies being able to issue debt to pay for capital improvements is that if they go away, there's someone obligated. So at the end of the day, with this transfer, there's no financial change to the relationship. There is no change from a governance perspective in the sense that the city retains all the same powers it presently has to influence the governance of the authority through the appointment and confirmation of board members. And as Will can articulate, in more detail if you'd like, the relationship between the authority and its customers is exactly the same. They have been operating in a status virtually indistinguishable from owner of the assets for 30 years. Mm-hmm. This changes the name on the deed, right? But it doesn't really change the way anything will function.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So we operate just as we've been doing basically over the past, how many years? It's
30 years.
30 years, right? So nothing changes, no less financial obligation from us, no more financial obligation from us. And ultimately, if whatever Pittsburgh Water dissolves, then it comes back to us.
That's right.
And there's, not reiterating all the other protections that are built in, but the board is 9 members?
Correct.
9 members,
seats.
okay. All appointed by the mayor?
Correct.
Everyone, okay.
And all confirmed by council.
Right. Isn't that our most assurance that it won't become private?
I think so. I mean, I think that is true. Well, let me answer that question slightly differently. That is the way in which the city exercises governance authority over all of its authorities, right? So that is a critical component. I guess I would say there are further assurances here because of other actions taken, like the amendment to the Home Rule Charter, right? The amendment to the Home Rule Charter is a higher level of law than city code or the actions of an administration or council, so it offers even deeper protection.
Yeah, so rather than just rely on the politicians to do the right thing, that there are built-in mechanisms here.
Even if some future council and mayor were to be of the opinion that privatization was the right course, they would have to go back to the voters at large to change the charter to allow them to do that. Otherwise, they would be in violation of the law, and the action couldn't proceed. So, and similarly, this agreement refers directly to that provision of the charter in making that a contractual obligation. So I think that there are more specific, in this case, protections in place that complement the governance control.
Right. So if there were a catastrophic event or just whatever, your big main lines burst or expense that was enormous expense, Pittsburgh Water has the means to cover all that. It never will come back to us and be like, hey, guess what? You are kind of responsible because you are a city authority. It never falls on our shoulders. Pittsburgh Water is in good standing as far as taking care of any major expenses, and it would not shift the responsibility to us or from us in any which way, right?
No, not for the assets that we own.
Exactly. Right. Okay, that's it. Thanks very much. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Smith.
Thank you. And I want to say, first of all, congratulations on your river hounds.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Let me just say, you're the biggest supporter in the city of Pittsburgh of the river hounds. And I see a lot of people taking photos, but I know you're a season ticket holder and have been going to the games long before you got here. And we'll go, I'm sure, as soon as you leave too. So congratulations.
Yeah, I was there on Saturday for their first ever Eastern Conference
I was
title.
going to tag you in
It was quite a night. Thank you very much.
I was going to tag you in something because I know how much you love them.
I saw the crowd. It was incredible. I was coming across the bridge. I'm sorry, Council.
Record attendance.
But oh my gosh, and they were just crazy. They were like flags waving, everything. It was a spectacle. It was beautiful. So sorry.
Yeah, so that's okay. So I just want to make sure I mentioned that. And but I do want to ask a few questions. I mean, because this is concerning. This is a huge decision council's making, and even though the PUC might have the ultimate decision, they're appointed. 3 of them, at least, by Governor Shapiro were appointed or reappointed, and so I'm sure he's not for privatization. But it still is something that we're taking a big risk on, and it's our water. So I have a lot of concerns, and actually it was the Women's Caucus who really started bringing a lot of light to the to PWSA. So I want to make sure that we say there's some of us here that have been here for a long time who understand there's a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of interest in privatizing it, and a lot of game playing, and a lot of people both on the state level that have a lot of say in what happens in the city of Pittsburgh, whether they're Republican or Democrat. Everybody has a say when they have some kind of power. So with that being said, I have a lot of concern because we haven't seen the agreement, and I would want to hold until we saw the agreement. And when do you think that would be?
The agreement was attached to the legislation when it was transmitted.
So it's attached.
And linked
Okay.
to in the agenda for today's meeting.
And then did we have an attorney sign off and say everything that we're saying that it is accurate? That's what I would like to know, that our law department also signed off. I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
make a decision that's right.
The law department was involved in the negotiations of the draft agreement that was attached to the agenda today from the beginning to the end. The law department, in conjunction with Pittsburgh Water's solicitor, they were the ones who actually wrote the agreement. So we had negotiating sessions where we discussed broad terms. That then resulted in multiple drafts of the agreement, which we went through line by line as through the form of negotiation. But again, all of the actual writing of the proposed agreement was conducted by either done by a city attorney and then reviewed and agreed to by a Pittsburgh Water attorney, or in the inverse. So yes, the law department has approved all of the language in the draft agreement.
And if we held this and it ended up that we didn't move this until the next administration, we don't know exactly where they're going to stand with privatization. So I want to make sure that I'm making sure that I'm voting and understanding what my vote is. And so I'd like to look over those documents that were sent from the law department, having a legal opinion saying, yes, this is accurate. No, we won't be, jeopardizing the water authority by having it, an opening for privatization. And that's what I want from the law department, something very specific from that. Can you think we could have it before next week, before final vote?
I'm sure they could provide an opinion quickly as they prepared the agreement itself. Yes,
okay.
I'm sure that I don't want to speak for them without having had a chance to ask them, but I can't imagine a world in which they couldn't prepare something quickly.
Okay, and I do want to thank you for the job you've been doing, and you have a good team, at PwC. But there's still a lot of concerns that I think need addressed, and I'd like to see a continuing, that we're working the way that we have been working, and making sure that the consumers are not being overcharged. So, and I don't want to put them in jeopardy. So for me, it's more about our water, our drinking water. It's about the cost of everything for residents too. So it's not that I care about privatization as much as I care about what it means to our residents.
Just to heard and understood, nothing in the agreement speaks to rates or the manner in which rates are set. That's all covered in separate either agreements or law. So I think you're right to be concerned, as everyone is concerned about that impact. But the rate making process wouldn't change at all, for better or worse. Frankly, I just want to be clear that that's not addressed in this agreement at all, because it's not related to the transfer of the ownership of the infrastructure. And also, just to be clear, to the point about the PUC having the final say, that they could take exception to something in the agreement, at which point we would have to reopen it. But they don't have any unilateral authority to make changes or to order a different arrangement. So that would remain in the control of the city. You also mentioned the incoming administration. I'll just note briefly that, again, I'm not going to speak in any way, shape, or form for the mayor-elect, but we did brief his transition team on these materials shortly after the election, knowing that this issue may be coming back up for consideration. And so they're aware of the current status of this work. I just wanted to note that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. But I'm going to abstain today, and then will you try to get me that opinion before next Tuesday? So
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Okay. I just wanted to, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross?
Thank you. I think this is one of the biggest votes that we've ever seen in the 12 years that I've been serving at this table. And so I first want to kind of start off with something that we haven't discussed, which is specifically to PwC. Why do you want to buy this system?
It's a question of me. I
That
think
is a
you're
question.
Looking at me. Well, as Jake pointed out, the contours of the agreement were laid out in 1995. Our board of directors has supported, taking that option that was in September of this year and executing the transfer, not just because it was laid out then, but for the reasons that Jake and I have attempted to spell out. Having that clarity of ownership with respect to the system itself, we do think will improve the services we provide our customers in resolving some of the ambiguity as it relates to what was previously owned by the city and operated by the authority. So we see that as a benefit of this. We do not see it as an existential change, with respect to our customers and how they interact with us, the oversight that we have from DEP and the Public Utility Commission, and our relationship, quite frankly, with the city remains. So there have been no discussions at the board of directors level about this changing any of the dynamic that we have with this body or the mayor's office, but it is really just that operational clarity.
And are there comments from the board members about wanting the system for $1 because they think it's going to improve service to customers on the record? Is that reflected in board minutes that the public can see?
That I'm not certain.
Was there any discussion that was reflected in the board minutes when they approved exercising this option?
Off the top of my head, I'm not certain. I can look into it.
So there was maybe no discussion for the public at PWSA. Were there public meetings at PWSA before the exercising of the option was approved by the board of directors, similar to the public discussions that we're having here, the public hearing that we had, or the post agenda?
Our public board meetings aren't quite structured like this. The topic of the asset transfer has been discussed at our public meetings of the board of directors, but this is something we've been talking about since 2024, so I just can't recall off the top of my head exactly.
On the record?
When and how.
Talking since 2024 on the record?
I'm not certain exactly when those have been expressed. We've had extensive conversations with our board. It's a legal issue, so it is a topic that has been covered during our executive sessions. It's something that I have been speaking openly about for a year to customers and our employees. It's certainly not anything that we're trying to be, not transparent about, and especially came up in the context of the referendum, because my understanding was there was, concern about this transfer, and so we discussed, what the agreement is and is not in that context quite publicly, as well in collaboration with the mayor's office.
And what were the concerns from customers?
Not knowing what it meant. So, a lot of the same questions that I'm getting, from you all today is, does this change who Pittsburgh Water is, our governance structure, our financial obligations? And so especially, internally, there's been a lot of interest about that because it is a topic that has been referenced for some time. The lease is going to expire. What does that mean? So I have invested in trying to explain, and quite frankly, we didn't know until we peeled back the agreement and engaged in discussions with the city and the legal department when we realized this really, is not a change in any meaningful way with respect to customers, and that's something that I've been talking to them about.
So I've been trying to think about kind of how analogous this is or is not to other authorities. Firstly, it's a vastly bigger asset than any other authority. I don't think there's any other authority that owns basically a $2 billion asset. And that's just underestimating, the revenue that's brought in over 10 years, right? I'm not even sure that's how accountants would do a valuation. Maybe, it's a $4 billion asset, even underestimating the revenue that's brought in over 20 years. And again, we've had, when we had this discussion about during the hostile takeover attempt by People's Gas back in 2018 or so, this isn't a parking lot. Our customers need clean, safe water on a daily basis. Our residents are your customers, right? This isn't like an abandoned parcel owned by the land bank or a parking garage downtown owned by the parking authority, right? This is, people get evicted if their water is cut off. or lose custody of their kids when their water is cut off because they can't heat their homes because they have radiator heat, right? And our health is dependent on us having clean, safe drinking water. And some of us here lived through the lead crisis. I was on the board when that happened. Councilman Mosley spoke eloquently yesterday during the public hearing about how his family was impacted and the role that now Judge Wagner, previously County Controller Wagner, played in raising the alarm bells for us. I relayed that when I stepped into the PWSA long before Mr. Pickering was in Pittsburgh, that the entire authority was controlled by Veolia. The previous administration, the Ravenstall administration, had put the entire authority. So we had it, we own the asset here at City Council. We had leased the operations and maintenance to PWSA in 1995 or so. But then at some point in the Ravenstall administration, they kind of subleased it to Veolia, an entirely operate and maintain agreement. And so when we all walked in the door as new board members, the CEO was not our employee, he was an employee of Veolia. The chief engineer was an employee of Veolia. The chief accounting was employee of Veolia. The chief operating officer was employee of the whole top 5 people of the org chart. And, according to us, they lied to our faces. We've had lawsuits about this, and we've countersued, and we got rid of them because first they lied to us about their billing situation, and as Councilwoman Smith recounts, she and Councilwoman Harris and myself sat here at this table and had that Veolia employee tell us that the bills were accurate. And we knew hundreds and hundreds of our constituents were being overcharged by $1,000 or several $1,000s and were forced to pay or lose their water. And those were terrible, terrible times. Lo and behold, those bills weren't accurate. We did sue them over that. And then shortly everything unraveled, and Veolia, who was also in control of the Flint water system at the time, destroyed the Flint water system. And then lo and behold, we were in exceedance as well because they had fired our water quality department and had changed chemicals. So that, just as a reminder, many of us lived through that, and many of our constituents lived through that. And that's a privatization of operations, right? So even though we believe that the Home Rule Charter Amendment, which I was happy to work with our water table and bring to this body that, we 100% approved putting it on the ballot, and we passed that this year, I'm not clear myself whether that covers a further privatization of operations. Does anyone here think that Home Rule Charter Amendment prevents another Veolia contract? Veolia, which, by the way, has just merged with one of the water companies, Pennsylvania American Water, that is aggressively gobbling up municipal authorities across the state. Do we think it prevents a subletting or another operating and maintain lease?
There's a couple layers to that answer. Just briefly, it was Essential Utilities that merged with Pennsylvania American Water, not Veolia. But I think your point still remains.
That's not the briefing that I got from Food and Water Watch at the Post agenda on Monday.
It's a proposed merger of Essential and Pennsylvania American Water, the national.
It was a slide on the wall, or you were in the room. Yeah, was that inaccurate? What was briefed?
Is what someone did mention it 2 days ago, but it's a proposed merger between Aqua/Essential Utilities and American Water.
And Essential Utilities is who?
Essential Utilities was a merger of Aqua and Peoples. So that's not to discount your point, just to clarify for the record, Veolia remains a separately owned company. Nonetheless, your point still stands about how disastrous the Veolia arrangement was. To answer your question directly, the Home Rule Charter Amendment would prohibit the sale of the asset to a third party. It would not prohibit a management agreement, which was the structure of the agreement that brought Veolia in. I would simply note that that management agreement with Veolia was accomplished by your predecessors on the board of directors at Pittsburgh Water before you were there, during the period of the lease. So the current ownership arrangement similarly does not protect against that. So
But does our future one?
I think so, yeah.
No.
Is there anything in your bill of sale that prevents the repeat of history?
No.
Well, shouldn't it?
It is not the type of agreement that governs those types of operations. It is a bill of sale on who owns the asset, and so it speaks to how they can influence future ownership of the asset. So the piece of the puzzle that is relevant to the bill of sale is addressed. I think that regulation of management agreements is a relevant topic for perhaps subsequent action. I think you're correct to say that was a disastrous arrangement and something that should be addressed, or certainly could be addressed. It's simply not something that is within the scope of a bill of sale.
How would it be addressed? If we maintain ownership of the system, we could change the capital lease.
It could be addressed by, I suppose, by ordinance or by...
How could it be an ordinance? I'm looking for help here. We don't know if we don't own the system and the municipal authority. Can I write an ordinance that tells the URA what to do with its assets? Because if I can, whoa, this is going to be fun.
No, I don't believe so.
All right.
But I imagine that it could be then a requirement of the cooperative agreement between the city and the authority, for example.
Why is there going to be a cooperation agreement? And what fun can I have with URA cooperation agreements then? Can I have the same fun there?
I'm not an attorney, so I can't fully answer your question. The bill of sale addresses the question of ownership, not the question of the managerial business relationships the authority might enter into. I think that is a topic that is ripe for further discussion, but I don't have a specific answer to you for the mechanism that would take. Regarding the continuation of the lease, again, the prior lease provides a option to purchase. So the ability to deny the purchase, we do not have the ability to deny Pittsburgh Water the ability to purchase the system. We have, through this agreement, the ability to more clearly spell out what is being purchased. So from that perspective...
You've been emphasizing that. I don't want to go over that again.
Okay.
That has been something that clearly you spent a year on, just figuring out, is this pipe in Shenley Park yours or mine? I don't feel like that's sufficient. I said so when we had our private meeting.
That's right.
I pre-exist that map. When I got onto the PWSA board in 2014, the plumbers were still coming over here to the clerk's desk to look up 1800s plat maps to figure out where their pipes were. So all of the, and I didn't get that map. And for the record, I requested that map, and going to the office and seeing just my district projected on the screen and having to ask to even see the whole city, and just seeing a projection on the wall is not sufficient. And I do not think that is what is guaranteed in the home rule charter. When it says a council member asks for something, you have to give it to them. So we have been trying to very quickly talk about examples from each other's districts where, for example, there's a public street that PWSA has been trying to bill our residents, claiming that the pipes under the street aren't PWSA's. And somehow it's a private water line or it's a private sewer line. And your constituent who's on Social Security checks has to pay $30,000 to somehow excavate it because supposedly her house magically disconnected itself from some sewer. Or that the sewer that they pay to tap in for their new construction doesn't exist. There's all kinds of mistakes in what PWSA and these attorneys have been negotiating back and forth, and didn't work with council members to even learn these examples from their districts, right? I don't know how any of the people in the law department here or the law department at PWSA didn't ask us about our constituent, claims and concerns, or even look at their own histories, where my staff over the years have proved to PWSA that it was public lines and not private lines in Polish Hill or in Lawrenceville. So I'm disappointed in that, but I'm going to set that aside. Does that map include sewer?
Yes.
And does this right of clawback on the bill of sale include sewer lines as well? Because that impacts all of the city and not just the water lines, which are serving about 2/3 of the city.
Yes, it does include water, sewer.
And does that clawback, is that clawback for $1?
It would not require the payment of any funds.
Thank you. Okay, so for the record,
Sorry, may I amend that statement?
Sure.
The city would not have to pay Pittsburgh Water for anything that we were taking back in the event of the dissolution of Pittsburgh Water. We would have to assume Pittsburgh Water's debts, whatever they may be at that time. So they would not involve the payment by the city to them.
Yeah, let me just say for the record, as we said many times, kudos to the current leadership at PWSA. It really has been a turnaround story after kind of having to get rid of most of the organizational chart, the top of the organizational chart. The board has done a phenomenal job hiring back very capable leadership, and including installing Mr. Pickering. And we don't have 600 water main breaks a year, and we don't have flush and boil orders, and we don't have constituents losing water nonstop the way the system was really in peril back before COVID. So, and that's due for the record because we had some public comment this week that was angry at this body for how much the water system currently needs repair. And God knows that person clearly didn't live here 6 years ago because it was so much worse then. And as I just want to say, to give credit where it's due, we should all be mad at the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s and the 2000s because those pipes are 50 years overdue for repair. And so we're doing all of their work here in the 2020s. And we started in the 20-teens. And we're doing our decade's maintenance and replacement, but we're doing all the previous decades' maintenance and replacement as well, all at the same time. And that's why it's a crazy disaster out there. God knows we've made a lot of progress, not just on the lead service lines, but also on the water mains. So it has been quite the saga. But I do want to get back to like the issue at hand. We have had claims that, you know, public authorities are still public. And I just want to say, I said at the post agenda and I'll say it again, I consider every single municipal authority that this city has quasi-privatized, right? It is less public. It is an arm's length remove from this table. And it was a very popular thing to do in the 1990s, just like corporations were spinning out sub-corporations and paper corporations to kind of off-book things and hide debts. And it's really kind of the advent of PWSA as well. So it was just a shell company before actually employees moved over there and operations moved over there. There was still a water department. But the city was going bankrupt, and it was a moment of desperation. And so there's also been a claim that the $100 million that PWSA had on its books before it even had a 1 penny of revenue somehow is the payment for this asset right now, for it being a $1 transfer. And I completely reject that as well, right? I mean, even if it was badly financed for 30 years, which it was, and you paid double or triple that amount, you know, that gets you up to like $300 million maybe extra that you overpaid, and $100 million in 1995 is worth about $200 million in 2025 by the CPI Labor Department calculator that I just did yesterday. So, you know, maybe it was a $500 million payment, again, because of bad financial management, which also happened at PWSA over the years. So I don't think it's sufficient. And then you have where we are now, where we owe you $13 million right now as we sit here. And it seems absurd that we're paying for water and we're giving you away a $2 billion asset for even in the biggest, most generous, contemplation of it, maybe a $400 or $500 million bill that was put in place in today's dollars that was put into place in 1995. I mean, this is not really a great financial move for a city that's budget is, with all due respect, sorry, Deputy Mayor, our team is telling us is $30 million out of whack for the 2026 budget. So, and then we're going to pay another $10 million next year. I mean, our controller and our budget department are telling us, we may not be able to pay that water bill, which means we won't be able to fill swimming pools. And it would be a lot better if we didn't pay you a water bill. For the record, why do we have to pay you a water bill?
Due to our governance structure under the Public Utility Commission, we have to charge our true cost of service. The co-op agreement that was established between the city and the authority when we came under PUC jurisdiction spelled out a graduated rate so that the city was not paying the full retail rate until this year. So it has been, an opportunity for the city to get more used to paying the full water bill. So it is, prohibited for there to be free water. One, I think, relevant data point from, obviously there was the $100 million bond issuance, but, since 1995, the authority has invested $1.5 billion in the water and sewer system.
The Water Authority did not replace its mains as it should have in the 1970s, didn't replace its water mains as it should have in the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, or the 2010s. And we have had our constituents having flush and boil orders, being without water, and how many water main breaks?
Undeniable. I mean, we're living...
Untold. You've been a bad tenant. So that's maybe not a great line of argument.
My point is on the financials in terms of the level of investment in the asset as a leaseholder has exceeded $1.5 billion just on the capital side, not including the debt service the authority pays on that. So the $100 million
the last 5 years have been a great turnaround, but there's still the legacy of you just patching up what was mishandled, long before you got there. So the overall 30-year tendency has been that as a landlord, I'm not sure you've made up for the damage that was done to, let's call it like if a landlord and an apartment or a house. The damage that you did to the house over the last 30 years, you've made up ground, but the PWC was not a great tenant. So there's that. So I honestly think that's one of the reasons that this probably shouldn't be a transfer for $1, and why it's really not a great deal for the city. And aside from the dollar transactions, because I consider authorities to really be farther from the constituents and the people than this table is. Again, as a citizen, you can't unelect a URA board member, really. You can unelect 8 out of the 9 PWC board members. But the way you can both come and yell at us every week of your lives and really keep track of the way we're voting and vote us out is that our feet are closer to that fire that is our residents and our constituents. And we did at this table learn that firsthand when we had thousands of bills that were incorrect, when we had people who were concerned about the lead levels in their water. It was really this table that took action to hold PWC accountable. And I recall being at the community meetings with PWSA when Mr. Pickering first introduced himself to himself, because he had just arrived from DC and he was just the marketing person. And so we were already doing that work. That work was long underway, and being held accountable and going out and having those conversations and hearing those concerns. So that is why I am concerned that I don't think that this was in the... I cannot agree that transferring the water plant, the 1,000 miles of water line, the 1,500 miles of sewer line, all the reservoirs, all the water system, the water tanks to PWSA is going to somehow result in better more accountable, more transparent service to our constituents. I'm going to pause there in case anyone has a second round, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Warwick?
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to shift gears a little bit. So when I first took office, as I'm sure you both remember, between Forbes Avenue and Darlington, there was a private sewer line. And my understanding of the history of that was that there was this private sewer line that the city wouldn't take responsibility for, PWSA didn't want to take responsibility for, and the building owners that were, whose sewage was going into that line were not taking responsibility for. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. As you said, finger pointing, right? Who's responsible for this thing? Who's responsible for this thing? And when I took office, I had a desperate phone call from the property owners of the Manor Theater, which is on Murray, has nothing to do with that line, right? But because the line was so damaged at that point that there was raw sewage seeping into the basement of the Manor Theater, there was raw sewage. This is in the heart of Squirrel Hill, right? There was raw sewage just out, in the alley between the buildings. And it was so bad that this property owner, the Manor Theater had to close, I think, at least one of its, theaters because it smelled in the theater. There was a bar called the Warehouse or something. It was a black-owned bar. They moved, they left, right? So that business closed because of that. And then there were a few other businesses. Oh, it was a CMU building that was impacted. At any rate, so that was one of the first things that I dealt with. And my understanding is through the history of that, PWSA had actually built a new line along Forbes Avenue, right? But it was just this handful of property owners that I don't even sure why, but they didn't take the opportunity at the time that the new line was built on Forbes. They didn't take the opportunity to just tap into that line at the moment, which I think was offered to them by PWSA. I don't recall.
It was the challenging part is that we cannot perform any private plumbing improvements to a private property.
Well,
so what we were asking for them is to shift their plumbing or their building toward the front on Forbes.
Right.
And they did not take that opportunity. They thought they could just stay
Correct.
on that failing line
right.
behind
Correct.
them.
So they did, and so the result was, and it was just a handful, it was maybe 3 properties or something like that, and they just refused to tap into the brand new line that PWSA built for them. And so when I came, there's this sewage, and you said finger pointing, and it was like, so, finally, we got the health department to finally, step up and call for a water shut off, right? Also, I remember, because I remember reading about it in Public Source and thinking, oh my God, please don't let that be my district. There was a private line. It was in front of, some homeowners had a private line, and it ended up in a sinkhole in the street. And I've brought this up numerous times in meetings numerous times. And so to hear that there's been a discussion, a year-long discussion about, quote, what the system is, right? What the system is, and that we have residents all over this city, and we don't even know, right, the extent of it. I don't know, because as Councilwoman Gross mentioned, there was no map provided, who have private lines. They don't even maybe know that they have private lines, right? And because the city is just saying, well, we didn't build those lines like whatever 100 years ago. Those aren't ours. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, right? Those aren't ours. Oh, well, homeowner, they're not ours. And then so therefore they're not PWSA's responsibility. So we're not even looking at them. We're not even doing any kind of maintenance on them or maintenance isn't the right word, like inspection, just to let them know, like, hey, you've got this private line, FYI, there's an issue, right? And then all of a sudden, there's a sinkhole in this street. And, part of my district is by where this East End sinkhole was, just the other side of Braddock. And you see it, you can see the bricks sagging in the street. And it's just, it just feels like this transaction makes zero difference to residents. And here we could have made a real difference to residents by the city simply saying prior to this agreement, you know what, as a city, we are going to, presume ownership of any sewer line under one of our streets. If it's under our street, then it's ours. We're just going to assume that. And, it's just very frustrating. It just feels like and had we done that years ago, so the example of the Forbes Avenue situation, right? If the city had just said, yeah, that's our line, and PWSA had just said, yeah, that's our line, we own that, then the property owner, then we could have just gone in and said, look, we're cutting you off, we're cutting this line off, this is ours. And said either you tap into the new one or, or we could have, and if we were doing regular inspections, then we would know, right? Like in these, where we know there may be these private lines, like we could be looking at them saying, oh, you need to patch here, but we're not doing that for people. And we're kind of offering this like insurance that really isn't very much. It's like $15,000 max or something like that for the insurance.
Around there, on
right.
The sewer
so, these
section.
people on around near East End Avenue, it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? One family sold their home because they couldn't afford, to cover the cost. I know people who live, they're not in my district, but who are, it is a constant worry that something's going to go wrong with the sewer that they don't even own themselves, like they own, whatever, responsible for with the other neighbors on their street, and that they're terrified something's going to go wrong with it, and then they're going to have to, sell their house or whatever because they just know that they won't be able to pay for it. And then we did all of this, and we just didn't address that. I don't know. That's very frustrating to me. I don't know if you have any response, but I don't think there is a response. It just sort of feels like being gaslit a little bit, to be honest.
I can offer a partial response. It doesn't address the second part of your question, which is what would have happened if at some prior point the city had assumed ownership of those lines. Being that did not occur, we are not in a position legally to sell something that we don't own, right? So we cannot convey to Pittsburgh. I'm accepting that point, right? That if we were to have taken those lines at some point in the past, then we could sell them. At present, we can't do that. And I believe the two examples you point to different permutations that would take. The Darlington line, if I'm not mistaken, runs under private property, so that would not have been under our street. We wouldn't have a mechanism to claim ownership of that one. The East End one is a different example. It is under the street, and that could have been addressed in that way. So insofar as the private lines are not addressed in the agreement, it is because they are not owned by the city and thus not able to be sold by the city to someone else. On the question of assuming ownership of them in some other way, that is something that could have been done historically that was not done, and thus why they weren't part of this conversation.
What I would add is that we are in ongoing discussions. Each of these scenarios have slightly different facts behind them. We do have more newly constructed private, a private developer developing a piece of public infrastructure that didn't meet our standards And so we did not accept ownership. And, in a more recent history that asset fails, I don't believe our ratepayers as a whole, because some of this work can be so expensive, that it's necessarily fair for us to fund a private developer that chose intentionally not to meet public standards that may require significant investment. But at a large issue, Pittsburgh Water recognizes. I mean, we are trying to find creative ways to resolve this within our funding structure of not being able to fund improvements to private infrastructure. It is a conversation we're having with the Public Utility Commission in the context of our rate tariff. We had proposed on the sewer line side of things, more focused on the sewer laterals that all of you probably have heard from your constituents, where there's 100% ownership of the private property owner, but there are many instances where those failures, sometimes it's a joint lateral, and you have property owner disputes and issues in the right of way, that we want to find a way to be able to financially help customers make those repairs within the confines of our rules and regulations with the PUC. So I am, happy to advance those and include you in those conversations. It is something that we are, going to be focused on as we see the results of this latest rate case. In all likelihood, we'll be trying to look more holistically at some sort of program that probably limits our financial exposure, because the example you cited in Squirrel Hill, if I recall, that was maybe, I think, $2.5 million all in for that one investment for one city block. So this work is very expensive. We have about 1,000 miles of sewer system clearly within our control that we do not have inspection data on, that our regulators are saying that we need to catch up on. The comments earlier taken that there was a lack of investment and maintenance. So the system that we own now, our records are imperfect because we don't have that data. It's an older system, but in those extreme cases, we want to be able to be helpful, and we're trying to look for ways to resolve that. To Jake's point, what's before you isn't necessarily the vehicle to do that, but I want to, I'm open to including you in that conversation as we try to sort through it.
But I feel like it was as the city, and I mean, to compare like a new development that hasn't built their sewer system, their sewer system to code, which is weird. I can't even believe that happens, but perhaps it does. Something that was built within the past 20 years to something that was built 100+ years ago, and like holding to account the property owner because the developer way back then didn't build something up to code, just doesn't,
I think the challenge is defining, those differences. The reason I highlighted it is to say a broad stroke approach of saying if it's a pipe under the right of way, the city owns it, may be letting responsible parties off the hook and instead putting that cost burden on your constituents.
If I could, I'd like to address that question from another angle, which is that 100 years from now, the what we think of as appropriate construction techniques, much will change, but the instance that Will is referring to, where something was built within the last 5 years and not built to code and thus not accepted, 100 years from now, someone else will own that property, but because it was not able to be accepted now, means that it remains legally the private property of that parcel, right? What we face is that 100 years ago, there were people who built infrastructure that was not accepted by the city at the time because it was not sufficient to the city's standards as they existed at that time, and because it was not accepted, it remains part of private property. At which point, conversely, or counterintuitively, I should say, the state law regarding property rights is really what protects their ownership of what we think of as a liability, and rightly so. This is a challenging and complex legal issue that really is about Pennsylvania's laws regarding property rights, and it makes it very difficult to untangle, because it's not, I don't think it's an unintended consequence of those laws, but it is a result of those laws.
Well, it just seems odd because, we pave the streets, we fix the bricks, we do the sidewalks, we do all the other things for those streets that maybe were built by some developer, I don't know when.
Well, the streets, there are examples of both cases. In most cases, private lines are under private streets, where we also don't do any of those things. We don't even plow them. The overwhelming majority of those, not all, but the overwhelming majority of instances where there are private lines, they are under private streets. There are limited examples of lines that are under streets that were accepted, either at that time or subsequently. But those are truly few and far between. The overwhelming propensity of private lines are under private streets, which were also not accepted also for the same reasons at some point historically.
I mean, yeah, it seems like that's something we could remedy as a city, and it's something that I know that there are plenty of property owners that, we regularly get frustrated, communications from people who are on whatever, that we're just like not taking responsibility, whether it's paper streets or, private streets with sewer lines or whatnot. At any rate, again, I don't know, maybe I'm just, not as smart as I think I am, but it does feel a bit like being gaslit, that somehow the city and PWSA are not responsible for the sewer lines in front of it, and it's frustrating to me because we had all this time to talk about what the system is, and it would have been an opportunity to fix this problem, but we're now no longer going to own the system. And PWSA certainly isn't interested in fixing the problem.
I wouldn't say that at all.
I mean, it doesn't feel like it. I don't know.
Financial, rates have increased to a level that I know you've been concerned about. If you looked, I think one starting point would be to assess, as you suggest, the universe of these lines that are out there and what that liability would be, and speak openly about
right.
The financial
I hear you.
implications.
I hear you, Mr. Pickering. It would be nice to assess, but we didn't. Just like it would have been nice to assess, the 4 Mile Run situation, but we didn't.
But in this context, we can still have those conversations. The agreement is not precluding us from advancing this discussion that we're already
but
having.
we won't own but it'll be like we won't own the asset anymore. So that will preclude us from really having any say whatsoever.
I can say
again,
from
maybe
our
there's nothing
perspective,
to
that's
do.
not
I
how
just
we're
wanted to
viewing
bring it up that the city had an opportunity to say to our residents, yes, we will take over these assets for you, and then make them part of the system, part of what the system is, and then sell that system to PWSA so that PWSA would also be responsible, so that people aren't just like, people who've bought a home are not just like staring at a sinkhole in front of their house or a potential sinkhole, or relying on their neighbor who has a sinkhole in front of their house, right? And who just like can't get it fixed. It's just a terrible situation, I don't know, for residents. And it's just, and I mean, the question of what difference does this sale make to the public, and that feels like it could have been a major difference. That could have been something that we did to say, hey, look, there was this problem that we knew about, that we recognized, and we fixed that problem, and that then is one of the prime benefits of this sale. Anyway, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before going to second round, I do have a question. If this body were to not act on this, what would happen?
Will should answer part of this question, but the lease gives Pittsburgh Water the right to exercise the option as of September 1st. So Pittsburgh Water's ability to take ownership of, assert ownership of the assets is theirs to do as of that date. We don't have the ability to prevent that, as they were given that ability in the lease. So if we're not able to enter into a bill of sale, from the city's perspective, we lose the ability to define what constitutes the asset.
Thank you. Secondly, what I will say is, as we sat here, actually, there's two attachments that are the bill of sales, like bill of sale 1, bill of sale 2, and I did review them, as well as the legislation, which is fairly brief. And it does, I believe, protect the asset from ever being made private. It does not address the substantial concern that Councilwoman Gross brought up, which is the subleasing or the sub-operational, the Viola situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a legitimate concern that we need to think through and figure out how to address. I don't think we'll be able to do it today, but I think it's a very legitimate concern. Certainly their board could pass a resolution saying that we will never do this, and maybe we need to lobby the PWSA board to such effect. But it is a legitimate concern that the bill of sale in this resolution does not address. So I just wanted to sort of say that for the record.
May I add something to there, Council President?
Sure.
I just want to say we don't contest that. We agree that the bill of sale only addresses the actual sale of the asset, as that's what's within the jurisdiction of the bill of sale, but that other question remains a risk. It was a risk under the lease. It would remain a risk now. It's not something we are, or I believe, can impact here. But you're correct that that's the case, and I agree that it is worthy of addressing.
And if I may, just for the record, to say there is absolutely no appetite for a management operational contract at the authority.
I believe you. I don't necessarily believe you 20 years from now, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Because 20 years ago it was done. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Also, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that you will sign this bill of sale. It will go to the PUC. They have 30-day review period of which they can provide commentary. If they propose changes, you both would then have to agree to those changes, and then you would have to sign a new agreement.
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, this body consistently over the years has said we want to be able to see whatever that final version is. So I'm going to make a recommendation to the body. Section 3 of the legislation reads, and this is for the public's benefit so they understand in part why this will not be made private. The agreement or agreements shall be consistent with Article 11 of the Pittsburgh Home Rule Charter, which restricts the lease and or sale of the city's water systems, wastewater systems, and storm sewer systems to private entities. My suggestion, this is a friendly amendment, so I'm open to members and yourselves as well on how to construct it. I would add a section 4 that would read, any changes to the bill of sale made after the passage of this resolution shall trigger the resolution being referred back to City Council for approval.
Second. Is that a motion?
I can't make the motion.
Oh, I'll make that motion. So moved.
Second.
With discussion.
Are we able to do that? Because I don't know if we have because it's a negotiating contract.
Well, that's why I'm putting up for discussion.
I would just make a similarly friendly recommendation about the wording as it relates to process. But I think the spirit of what you're proposing, I don't have an objection to. So there would be, there's 2 steps that would follow council approval, and then 2 outcomes that could arise from there. One is the council approves, the resolution would be, the bill of sale would be signed, and then we could submit that bill of sale to council for the record. And then the PUC, if they review and approve it, then they would, we could just document that for your records, right? Their record of approval. In a world in which they request or suggest modifications, because we would have to reopen the agreement, that would be the kind of path that I would recommend, where a trigger such as what you're describing, if it's permissible under the rules, would make sense. So if the requirement would be for us to file a executed copy of the agreement, followed by the response we get from the formal documentation of response we get from the PUC. And if that documentation from the PUC is non-approval, then it triggers something. I think that would help clarify the record.
Okay. I think we're saying pretty much the same thing. He's recommending, if I hear you correctly, that once this bill of sale is actually signed, that they send a copy to council so that it can be formally documented, effectively read, received, and filed. And then if for some reason changes were then made, that would then trigger the provision to have it resent back to council.
That's
Correct.
what you said, though.
That we could avoid, that wouldn't be required if the record from the PUC. Again, I'm not disagreeing with the form of what you're proposing. I'm adding that the way in which you will know which course has been taken is when we file the appropriate records. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Okay, heard. No, I'm not looking at you to resolve it. I'm just trying to think through technically how to amend it.
Can we just hold it 1 week till we work on that stuff?
So,
I guess if I may apologize, and if I made it more complicated, my point was simply that you would know that it is not different because we would submit a document from the PUC saying that it was not changed. So I believe your proposed phrasing in the amendment may be appropriate. I just wanted to say how we would show you and substantiate that. Maybe that's a better way of me making my point.
Okay, thank you. Heard. So it was motioned and I believe seconded by Councilman Mosley. We're still on discussion. Councilman Gross.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And here's why I think that's so important that you add this section 5, I think it is. Councilman. 4. Because I can't look it up right now on the spot, but I believe that this body attempted this before with one of the cooperative agreements with PwC back before COVID. I don't know if it was 2019, what year it was. And we said, we want to vote on the final language and attached the cooperation agreement that was negotiated to our resolution, like a resolution that we have in front of us today. And then I'm convinced it was later changed by the administration and PwC without it coming back to council. And again, I can't on the spot look up the legislative record, find what was attached, and then compare it. And in this case, we do not want that to happen. We want to be sure that what we are finally voting is what is reflected in the record, and for the public to have that opportunity to, come to public comment. That is the reason we kind of do things this way. Again, I will just reiterate for the record, yes, the Home Rule Charter talks about the administration, having the authority to do contracting and not city council. But this is not a contract with dump trucks or face painters. This is a huge asset that belongs to the people. And also, a final point for the record, it is really important that the public understand that the PUC does have the authority now to set rates at PwC, and it can make changes to this document. But to my understanding, that is only true of the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority and not any other municipal authority of any kind in the state of Pennsylvania. Did I say that correctly?
Technically, it's with all of their regulated bodies. They have that.
But
it is not true of other water authorities.
I think you're answering a different question. Well, sorry. The PUC has that authority over any regulated utility. Pittsburgh Water is the only municipal authority that is a regulated utility.
Not the parking authority.
Correct.
Not the urban redevelopment authority. Not any other water authority created by a municipality in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Of which there are what, 100? Probably more than, probably many hundreds.
Yeah. No, that is true.
And that is because of state house legislation put forward by then Representative Mike Turzai.
Correct.
Who then left the legislature and then went to work for People's Gas while it was attempting the hostile takeover of PwC.
Yes.
For the record.
And just also for the record, there are two municipally owned utilities, Pittsburgh Water being the only municipal authority. The Philadelphia Gas Works, which is a city department, is in a similar regulatory position for similar reasons.
Which people in Philadelphia were also afraid that PUC was going to try to privatize and force a sale. For the record, again, because when State Rep Turzai put that bill forward in Harrisburg, the first thing I did was kind of research the PUC, and that's the first thing that came up on Google was people in Philadelphia afraid that the Pennsylvania Utility Commission, which is in Harrisburg, was going to try to force a sale to take away their municipal asset, not an authority, but a municipal asset, and sell it, which didn't happen, thank goodness. But I just kind of had to add in that special layer of why it's important that this body be this kind of hyper cautious, because that is the environment and the historic moment that we're in. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Second round on Bill 220 as now amended. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank you, Councilwoman Gross, for drawing on your expertise, maybe I'll say, in this field of many years. And I do agree with you and our president that protections, that you can't sub out the management of the authority. So you'll work that into some sort of document for us that we have that in writing, and we can be assured of that, I guess.
That would be I just wonder, again, just for the sake of total clarity, as relates to selling or leasing the assets, the physical assets, that is covered in what is before you today. A management agreement, like a contract with a company to provide management services, is not within the scope of the bill of sale, and so would be subject to separate action of some kind. But insofar as the question of ownership can be addressed here, it is addressed.
And I would, commit to, this is the first this concern has been raised in this way, so I would definitely discuss it with our board. I don't imagine any pushback.
Great. So the other thing was, this is kind of not off subject, but do you get calls, Director, from people? I had 2 instances where people thought they had protections, insurance, probably not bought from PWSA. I don't know who they purchased it from, but turns out, the responsible cost them like $18,000 to replace. Have you gotten complaints or things from constituents on that end?
On occasion,
people
I'll
think
hear
they
from...
have the proper insurance, but it turns out they don't, and they've been paying for years, and it doesn't cover what they want.
The instances I have been clued in on are, we just started our line insurance program, just within the last few months of us partnering. So we now have sort of an equivalent offering for our customers, and we'll even offer it to yours in the South Hills. But the instance that often comes up is in the fine print of the insurance, maybe the repair exceeds that coverage limit, and people will have a contractor come out, start the job, say, I'm at my limit, and they walk away, and then we're forced to work with them to try to clean things up.
Got it.
May I add something?
Sure.
I've also encountered examples where people are incorrectly under the impression that their homeowner's insurance covers repairs like this, and so they may believe that something should be covered through their general homeowner's policy when it is not. That's just further context that sometimes happens. People have that experience.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything of guilt that PWSA or the city of Pittsburgh has done. I think somebody's selling them insurance for their water lines, and they're under the impression that they've been paying all these years, it's all covered, and they realize at that point it's not. So anyway, sorry to get off.
If you want to send them my way, we're happy to look at it.
I will do that. That's great. And just so I'm clear, did you say you will offer insurance protection to folks that are in my district for Pan American water lines?
Yeah, they can opt to same water and sewer and internal plumbing coverage.
I think I would be more comfortable purchasing insurance from PWSA than some rogue, somebody selling insurance door to door or whatever it might be. So, okay, two other things that, one I disagree on that we've talked about, Councilwoman Gross brought up, and that is that the source system is an asset. No, it's an asset to me like the municipal court building is an asset to me, okay? Meaning we are never going to sell it. We can't sell it. We wouldn't sell it. If we were to sell it, I don't know who would be in the market. If surely some private company might come in and buy it so they could raise our rates because they're delivering our water. So, I mean, being that we're never going to sell it, it's not an asset. It's more, and on that, let me just ask you this, Will. If we decide to not hand over the lines to you and you don't take it or whatever, could you then turn back and say, if we have a big 42-inch line blow, and say, well, that's not our responsibility, it's the city's responsibility?
No.
Theoretically, you
can't
can't do that.
No,
Okay.
we still maintain that responsibility.
Yeah, right. So I don't agree that with it's an asset, because it's not something we're going to borrow money on. It's not something we're going to sell. Therefore, it's not an asset to me.
A variety of terms get used to. The one I prefer is to call it infrastructure, because that describes what it is. In the context of a transaction like this, it's defined as an asset, so that's why we continue to use that term. But you actually make, this may not have been exactly what you were meaning to say, but you actually make an important point that I just want to clarify. Whether we call it an asset, a liability, infrastructure, we're talking about, this is maybe more for the public's understanding, we're talking about the physical pipes themselves. They come with value in what they do and the authority's ability to generate rates off of them. They come with costs and liabilities. You could call them a variety of things.
Right. I don't see it as an asset. I don't see it as a liability either, because you're managing that. The expense is going to fall on PWSA, not the city of Pittsburgh. So I don't look at it as an asset or a liability. But one thing that the councilwoman did bring up that caught my ear is, it does seem crazy that we owe you $13 million in water this year. It really does.
So as I mentioned, that the billing and business-like arm's length relationship we have with the city was established after we came under the PUC. Right. I will say, on our end, we are paying for things that we didn't traditionally pay for. Pension costs, permit fees, our tree fees are, I believe, exceeding $1 million based on our construction projects this year. So in other shared services, fleet is another shared service that we both use, whatever the first vehicle we still call it, but I know it's a different provider.
Transdev.
Yes. So there are funds that we are contributing now. The previous arrangement was not only free water to the city, and often at some of the big sites it was unmetered, which was unacceptable. To not know is unacceptable.
I agree.
In general.
Metering it was a good idea.
And the authority did provide an $8 million payment to the city for unspecified reasons. So while it may not be a wash at this point, I haven't crunched the numbers. We are also contributing to the city at a rate that was not previous to that co-op agreement. And I have the right person next to me to verify that.
No, that's right. So the previous arrangement where we did not pay for water also meant that the authority did not pay for all the things Will listed. I don't need to relist them, but there were numerous things that they got for free from us too under that previous arrangement. The required changes under PUC regulation did away with that in both directions. So there's significant payments coming from Pittsburgh Water to the city that did not exist before either. And for many years, as we were on that sort of graduated scale to paying for water, those costs essentially did net each other out. Now it is, we end up with a slight, we end up paying them some more than they've paid us because of the cost of water relative to the cost of those other things, but it does, they do net each other out significantly.
Right. So did you say earlier that the PUC prohibits you from giving water to the city of Pittsburgh for free?
Any customer. It looks at them.
Yeah. So we're considered a customer, I guess.
Correct.
Is that right? Yeah.
We have three relationships to Pittsburgh Water. We are a customer of Pittsburgh Water in that they provide us with water. We are the owner of Pittsburgh Water in the sense that the city created the entity, or we occupy the role that in other investor-owned utilities the shareholders would occupy, governance, not ownership in the literal sense, but governance. And then we are a regulator of their activities in the right-of-way. So in our regulator capacity, we charge them fees. In our customer capacity, we pay them for water.
And buildings as well, significant building fees.
And you're saying it's pretty much a wash. if we add it
No,
on?
I don't want to give anyone the false impression. It was over a 5-year period, we gradually stepped up what percentage of our bill we were paying. For the early years of that, what we owed was less than what they owed us. It was a wash at one point. We now end up on net owing them money, but it is not the case that we pay 100% for water and they're still getting a bunch of things for free. They do cancel each other out to a degree, but in general, we end up owing slightly more than what we would otherwise receive from them.
Right. So when the PUC says prohibits you from giving the city of Pittsburgh as a customer water, do they set the rate as well?
They approve our rates, the way the process works. We propose rates. We're actually hopefully nearing completion of this process right now. There are interveners that take a look at that proposal. PUC staff and lawyers look at that proposal.
Right.
About
So-
1,000 questions are asked of us.
Right.
And then we typically settle somewhere in the middle. That is approved by the Public Utility Commission. So
Okay.
they don't necessarily say your rate should be X. They are the final stop of that approval process.
If I can anticipate
Yes.
the question I think you might be asking,
Yes.
Councilman.
You know where I'm going with it.
At one point, Pittsburgh Water proposed a rate for us that the PUC determined was too low and rejected. So the rates they propose, they can't give us a sweetheart rate without the PUC rejecting that. So
See, I always was under, I understand that. But I was on the understanding that PUC was looking for people not to gouge the customer, looking to decline inflated rate. But my question was going to be, can we get a lower rate? And what you're saying, we could if PUC were to agree to it.
What they said in that instance was that by charging us too little, Pittsburgh Water would then have to be charging residential customers too much to make up the difference.
If we
so,
were, yeah.
So they do, their overall goal is to prevent people being overcharged, but in so doing, they're looking to ensure that every different type of ratepayer is paying their fair share, so that giving water too cheaply to one doesn't adversely affect another. That was the decision in that instance.
I understand. And if we were flush with money, I wouldn't even be asking you this.
No,
But
understood.
I will ask you publicly, will you decrease our rate or consider it with the board if we can get approval from PUC, or is it already at a decreased rate? Are we paying the same rate as every customer?
As a non-residential
Yeah.
customer.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you not lower our rate if the board approved it?
The board cannot set rates. That final
can't set the
that
rate,
discussion
yeah.
would have to take place at the Public Utility
Got
Commission.
it.
And the city, I mentioned sort of the process and interveners. The city has intervened on occasion in our rate case to have lawyers in the room, and that could be something in a future rate case that's discussed.
Because I didn't realize how much water we use until when you start talking about fire engines and swimming pools, and it adds up to.
The question you're asking, Councilman, was the question that was addressed in that. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a rate case within the past, obviously, past 10 years.
Right.
And the decision of the PUC specifically, was that the city should be charged the non-residential rate and not its own separate rate.
Right. Okay, and I guess they're the final say-so in that.
That's right.
Right. So I'm confident that there are mechanisms in place that we're not going to become a private water company someday, as long as providing you address the concerns that Councilwoman and the President had. I'll vote affirmative today, and then hopefully we'll get those answers by next week. So Monday actually. So it's a short week.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Mosley.
Yeah.
Councilman Wilson.
I already sure know how I vote.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, for indulging us in this lengthy but I think very important discussion. My first question, actually, just out of pure curiosity, that just came up as we've been discussing. Has ever an authority actually got out of being under the jurisdiction of the PUC? And we don't have to delve too deeply.
No, I mean, I
into
think because
that.
to Jake's earlier points, a little nuance, but we are the first municipal authority in Pennsylvania to be regulated.
It's not like Act 47, where the idea is you come into it because of some group of circumstances and then you come out when those are gone. It exists to regulate all what are called public utilities, and the idea is that regulation will be permanent. The difference is that the state law that governs this never put municipal authorities into that category. So it would be investor-owned utilities or privately owned public utilities that were regulated, and then they made a particular exception for Pittsburgh Water and the Philadelphia Gas Works, and there's no kind of sunset on that. So the act of the legislature that set this imagines it to be permanent. Of course, the legislature could act again and change that, but there's no other procedure other than that.
Okay, it would be action by the General Assembly, though.
Correct.
So my next question is just understanding the cadence of where we're at right now, given the amendment that we have that I think to some way, lowered a bit of the anxiety, but we also talked about a particular ordinance that, we may want to endeavor around, preventing management, which obviously this legislative vehicle does not, deal with. So let's just say, hypothetically, we approve this today, it goes to a final vote on Monday, on a double session day. Let's say hypothetically, then on that same day, this would come to a final vote. We would introduce an ordinance that would prevent the management. We rule 8 it, and then have the same conversation we're having at Monday afternoon, and then would have to then pass that the following week. Being that there is a 30-day period before this comes back, I guess I would assume that this is not what's in front of us. Even if we pass it on Monday, it's not going to be fully executed until it comes back from the PUC. So would that give us the ability to pass this ordinance that we've talked about to add those further protections?
No, Councilman, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just to address one specific point in there,
Sure.
and it would be to council's determination about the rest, but this agreement would be executed by the city and Pittsburgh Water before being sent to the PUC.
Okay.
And then if the PUC approves it, then it's just in effect.
Gotcha.
If the PUC, rejects or takes exception to some of it, then per the amendment that you all just adopted, that would bring it back to this table.
Okay. So
when it came back, well, if the PUC rejected the agreement as it had been sent to them, then it's void, at which point it's not executed. So council could revoke its authorization.
So,
We need a conversation.
from
with the
your
state.
perspective, I know, this isn't a legal briefing. Will we need to, pass the ordinance prior to executing this?
No, because
to have the protections that we need to keep. The part that this doesn't, it obviously protects ownership but not management.
The question of management is not is not I don't want to say not relevant, that's not how I mean it, but it is not within the sort of scope of this agreement, which is about ownership. So I believe the two could proceed on parallel paths. One, there are protections in this document which only concerns ownership, that protects against the ownership concern, and then another form of action that addresses the management question does not need to intersect directly with this. So I don't believe that there would be any conflict or anything that would create a procedural challenge in considering the type of ordinance you're referring to either next week or even, it wouldn't be a challenge to do it further down the line. I understand there's a sense of urgency and a desire to do it quickly. I think that makes sense, but they don't have to sync back up necessarily.
Okay. I think that's exhausts my question.
Thank you, Councilman Warwick.
Well, I mean, back to that same question, though. So it's an asset that we own. If we were to pass an ordinance with regard to the management of an asset that we own, and I know that in the bill of sale, right, isn't there some line that says in line with whatever ordinances, et cetera? Like that PWSA must do this or that in line with whatever.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Water is obligated to abide by the rules, by the laws of the city, as anyone is, right? So it is a legal question that I cannot give you a definitive answer to here at this table at this moment. What a ordinance would have to say to provide the type of protection that you're seeking. But yes, Pittsburgh Water is obligated to abide by the laws of the city. So if a law of the city on that question could be properly adopted. It would not matter whether the city owned the assets. It wouldn't be a question of the ownership.
I know, but it just seems odd that the city, and maybe we can have the law department figure this out before Tuesday, like, could we pass, so that's what you're saying is, could we pass an ordinance before?
But like, would we have, I guess, interrogatory, will we have to?
It feels like we would, because we would be talking about an ordinance regarding an asset that we own. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
I want to be entirely clear that I'm offering my opinion here and not,
Right.
but I don't believe that there is any reason why the ordinance would have to be adopted while the city owned the asset. The ordinances govern the behavior of individuals and property that the city does not own on a daily basis. So I don't believe that
yeah, that's true.
I don't believe that those two things need to happen in that particular sequence. And I'd be happy it's similar to Councilwoman Cale Smith's question to assist in getting further opinion on that from the law department. But there's nothing that presents itself to me as we're having this discussion to say that the city would need to still own the asset to adopt that type of regulation. What it can
Like maybe
say.
we could just like systems that provide water to the residents of Pittsburgh generally or something. I don't know. Sewage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, I'm
Got
saying
it.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that something along those lines is
I said we
possible.
introduce it on Monday.
Right.
Any further discussion? Councilman Coghill.
Real quick, I understand the rate and everything. Thanks for explaining that. But let's pretend like the city's going to be falling on hard financial times, okay? Which is a reality. And we owe you $13 million for last year. And if we can't pay our bill, is it discretion solely with PWSA to say, oh, we're going to continue filling the pools and we'll, just run up the bill, and someday when we get better financial situation, we'll be able to pay you? Or are you obligated to shut our water off where we can't fill our pools? So
I haven't been presented with that scenario. I think our general operating procedure would be that we would have to serve termination notices. I think, as with any customer, we attempt to get them on a payment plan to get them paying toward their
and we're a
arrearages.
special customer, no matter which way you look at it.
And
we're
I
a
agree
special
with you.
customer. Right.
The question is in the eyes of the Public Utility Commission code. They may not see it that way.
Well, that's what I mean. So they can regulate that. They can say to you, no, you have to shut them off.
It is all spelled out in our tariff. Now, there may be, in extenuating circumstances, as we, there is flexibility in very extreme circumstances with critical facilities. We would have that discussion, but I obviously hope it doesn't come to that.
Can I just quickly add two things?
Sir.
One, I just want to, maybe I didn't state it as clearly as I should have before. That $13 million is the gross amount of our water consumption. That does not take into account the monies owed to us by Pittsburgh Water that offset significant portions of that. So the actual amount is smaller. That's one.
Like how much smaller, do you know?
It's in the single digits of millions of dollars.
Okay.
More than $10 million of that is offset.
Got it.
But the second point that I would just make, and I understand, don't want to get into a discussion about the budget here. We'll have time for that later. The exact same circumstances exist under the lease, right? So the sale does not change the answer to the question you just asked.
Right.
I just want to make that part clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I didn't know the answer beforehand, and I don't.
No, I
know the
understand.
answer now, I guess, but
For the sake of just bringing it back to what we're discussing
right.
today, it's not different
Right.
either way.
And obviously, PWSA is not going to shut off the water to the city of Pittsburgh unless you're mandated to do it. And if you are, then you have to. If the PUC says you do, you do. I expect we'll pay our bills and we'll find a way. I'm not concerned about not paying our water bill. Just theoretically, that if it could happen, but especially the amount of water that we use. So over the next couple of years, I just wanted to make sure we don't get our taps shut off, even if we have to go on a payment plan or something of that nature. PUC allows you to put people on payment plans.
Correct.
Okay, so we're a customer. You could do that then. And theoretically. We hope we're going to pay our bills, don't worry. But okay, that's it for me, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Smith?
Just real briefly, I think it was really important. We should have probably had the law department here for this conversation, because I think there's a lot of things being thrown around, because we're all trying to look at what we can do to protect our residents, protect PWSA, protect the city, do everything that we're supposed to do. But I don't know what jurisdiction we have over, once the state has jurisdiction over some of this with the PUC and some other things, I don't know what we have the authority to change. And so I'm wondering if we put something in place, if we're even able to do that legally. And the other thing is, it's my understanding, if we miss 2 utility payments, we could be into Act 47. So I think these are things that we need to make sure we're understanding fully before we're drafting things and throwing things out. So I'm a little bit anxious, and I'd like some clarity from the law department on all those things before final vote. Do you want me to tell you what I need? I want to know, can we put in, Councilman Mosley mentioned some legislation he wants to put in.
Understood.
Can we make sure that we have the ability to do that?
Yes.
Can we also have some clarification? What happens if we do miss a water payment? I mean, can 2 water payments, a water bill put us in Act 47? And do you pay water bills? Does PWSA pay water bills to yourself?
No, we don't. We monitor our usage and consumption, but that financial exercise just would create more administrative burden for no reason.
Okay, I'm just wondering why you don't and we do. Okay.
They would be paying it to themselves.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I know, but I'm just saying we're paying it to ourselves. I mean, we're kind of doing the same. Yeah, now we won't be a part of it. Yeah.
The analogy is when there was a city water department, we didn't pay it to ourselves, right? Because we were both generating it and consuming it. They're the ones in that position now. On the question of bills, yeah, I think that's a question to answer. I'm happy to assist you in getting an answer. Again, it would not, that question does not directly relate to the question asked by this resolution, just to be clear.
Yeah, I just feel like there's still a lot of questions, and I'll give some clarity. I'll send an email with some clarification, what I'm looking for.
Sure.
But I want to know what I'm voting for, prior to voting. That's all.
Sure.
So I'll abstain today as I was going to, but I do feel a little bit more comfortable after hearing the conversation. A little bit, not a whole lot.
Gross.
Right, just to follow up and briefly make sure we emphasize that point. I'm trying to remember the year the water plant was built,
Element started in the 1890s.
1890s.
Original.
And so the city's water bill for 120 years, 25 years was zero, because it was our water system. We built it and we operated it. We sublet it at some point in the 1990s. And now our 2025's water bill is $13 million. And 2026's is projected to be $10 million. I'm not sure why less. It doesn't really matter for this discussion. And one of the main reasons to have a municipal water system isn't just drinking water, it's fire suppression. So who pays the fire hydrant bill?
We pay a bill for that. It's the rate for fire suppression is different.
Yeah, my understanding is the fees associated with fire hydrants are limited to the areas that are not served by Pittsburgh Water. We do not have a fire hydrant fee.
So if you cut off our water, the fire hydrants will work or won't work?
If we want to go down this road,
I do.
We could not.
That's why I'm asking.
We could not. To shut off the fire hydrants would mean we would shut off our residential water distribution system, because that's what the fire hydrants are tied to the street. We would cease to operate and serve our customers for a fire suppression instance. I think
And you would not do that?
No.
Thank you. So the $13 million water bill that's due this year is what is metered for this as a city meter.
Yes.
Yes.
Which does not include the fire hydrants.
Does not include the fire hydrants, but it does include the swimming pools.
Yes.
And so the bill that we've received for 2025, how much of that was swimming pools?
I don't know.
Who does?
I don't really think that we have a clear picture of the answer to that
They're all
question.
metered.
You're
The
right.
bill is issued by Mr. Pickering and from the meters on city facilities.
I'm not saying that an answer to your question couldn't be generated.
We don't have an itemized bill?
We have hundreds of separate bills.
Okay, good.
So we would have to pull that together. I'm not saying that the answer to your question can't exist. I'm saying we've not analyzed it in that form.
How many hundreds? 900? 110?
I don't know.
You don't know how many meters we have? It took a long time putting them all in there.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the meters did exist prior to the effort that started in 2019.
How do you know you're billing us accurately?
We have been working with.
So who does know?
I mean, my billing department knows how many meter connections are associated with City of Pittsburgh.
Great.
Yes.
Send them over.
To do what?
I don't know. Who's auditing it? I mean, how do we know it's right? Again, having lived through several thousand of our residents, having absolutely been billed inaccurately by PWSA, like we did, it wasn't that long ago. No, I'm gonna guess you're 7 or 8 years ago now, right? And they were wrong. And so, I mean, someone must have double checked them.
Yeah, the team in the Department of Public Works Bureau of Administration, which receive and pay all of the city's utility bills, among other things.
How fortuitous. We have DPW coming in here now at this point, any minute. Hey, DPW, we're going to ask you about the water bills.
So they are the ones who receive and process the bills. So the bills are generated by Pittsburgh Water. They receive them and process them. They could speak much more thoroughly than I can to the specifics of that. You recently, council recently considered and approved a arrangement that they worked out with Duquesne Light to dramatically improve the manner in which we receive their electric bills. I know it is their goal, and Pittsburgh Water shares this goal of making a similar administrative improvement with respect to the city's water bills, but that is not yet accomplished, which is why I'm saying that it is admittedly presently a fairly analog process. Our goal will be to change that. I would love to be able to say we can go into our online account and tell you exactly how much of that is attributable to those sewers.
That was the pretty picture that was painted that caused all of the inaccurate bills, frankly. Putting in the smart metering system was done very badly by Veolia. There have been lawsuits in other cities about it. And the doodad that they put on this table when Councilwoman Smith and Councilwoman Harris had their post agenda about it was supposedly doing that live metering kinds of things, but it didn't work.
For the sake of what I'm describing, I'm not talking about new technology. I'm talking about filtering the accounts in a more manageable fashion, similar to what they discussed with Duquesne Light. It wasn't any changes to the meters. It was rationalizing the way the accounts were structured. So
in
that
RJD?
Correct. No, in Duquesne Light system in that case, in Pittsburgh Water system in this case, so that we can look at them and draw more ready inferences from the existing data, not new data collection methods.
Right. I mean, hypothetically, since we have so many different meters, we should be able to know if there are 20 toilets running in a building. Right.
Such a thing could be done from a more ready access to the existing data. The form in which we get it now doesn't allow for that. It is a goal to achieve that.
Right, because again, we've been told in our budget hearings in the last week that we need to find around $30 million. And so that is scary. And so people are scared. And so this is a big bill that we'll be looking at. So I think that's all that's needed for this discussion, but it's not the end, but it can be the end for today. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, thank you.
That's okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
One in opposition,
Abstain, please.
one abstention. That means it receives an affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our agenda. We do have meeting announcements. This afternoon at 1:30, Council will hold budget hearings for the Department of Public Works, chaired by Councilwoman Warwick.
Can't help it.
Thursday, November 20th at 10, Council will hold budget hearings for the Bureau of Animal Care and Control, Bureau of Emergency Medical Services, and Bureau of Fire, chaired by Councilman Coghill. Thursday afternoon at 1:30, Council will hold a budget hearing for the Office of Municipal Investigations, chaired by Councilperson Charlin, and the CPRB, chaired by Councilman Coghill. Then on Friday, November 21st at 10, council will hold budget hearings for the Department of Innovation Performance, chaired by Councilwoman Gross. And next week, council will hold our regular meeting and standing committee meeting on Monday, November 24th at 10 a.m. and 1:30 respectively. To register to speak at these meetings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage or call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Councilwoman Smith.
Yeah, and just briefly, I just want to mention a few things, well, a couple of things. I wanted to apologize for missing yesterday, but I was out watching 4 grandkids when my son-in-law had surgery. I got to tell you, I think it was probably easier to be here. It was four rambunctious kids, but I enjoyed every minute with them. But anyway, I do want to say that we should be paying attention. You know, I know we're not on the school board, we don't represent the school board, but there is a lot going on with our school district right now, and I think, you know, we as council we need to pay attention to what's happening there. You know, we had an education commission, which we later voted, to dismantle it. I actually think we should never have done that. We probably should have kept it in place, and it may not be too late to revisit that issue, or that idea. But I think we've been asked by other people, including Angel Gober, I don't know if everyone saw the email, to pay attention to what's happening here. These are our kids, our schools, and the decisions they're making affects our communities tremendously. And, I think that I'll be frank, I think there's been an attack on the public schools for several years now. I think there's a lot of people that would love to see a city-county merger, and they feel like that's one of the major obstacles. And I feel like that because of that, our kids are paying the price of that. And I think it's time for council to be more vocal, more boisterous, and more present and more involved in some of these decisions. And if that means going to council, to their meetings or having meetings here, then I think we need to start doing it. But I want to say this, it's never that I've been opposed to any kind of merger. I'm opposed to us thinking we're going to outsmart the people that elect us to represent them. They didn't ask us to come here and be our own voice, to make deals, to do things. They asked us to represent them. So I think we have a responsibility to do that. And I'm going to shut up now, but I'm not going to shut up coming forward. So just so you know, it's coming. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ward.
Just with regard to the PPS, I mean, I agree. I've had some good conversations with some of the directors, board directors at PPS, and I know I have concerns too. Specifically among them, for the schools in my district, is the transportation issue. In particular, there's Mifflin School, which of course south of the river, and the change would be the change on the table. The part of the plan that they'll be voting on would be to switch that from being a K through 8 to just a K through 5, and then sending those 6th through 8th graders to Colfax. And the idea that would happen in the coming school year, right? This coming August, with no bus service. There is no bus service. There's no PRT service, and with no clear commitment that those kids would get bused in a timely manner over to Colfax. And that also includes Hazelwood kids that, by the way, when the last school closures happened, they have no school in Hazelwood. Now there's a charter school in its place, right, Propel. But those Hazelwood kids now get bused over to, but that's because they're K through 8, right? So that's the, so the coverage for the K through 5. But, and currently, those buses are chronically late, right? Kids are at Mifflin late after, you know what I mean? And so that is, that harms those kids from Hazelwood. So I am very concerned about about the lack of a transportation plan, and that you would close, and I really am not familiar with the other schools around the district, right? But that you would close any school where you have kids who are currently walking, or have a current bus offering without a very clear plan. And to be honest, not even just a plan, but like commitments in place from bus operators that they will be able to accommodate those changes, is very concerning to me. Yeah.
I will also chime in. I've also had repeated meetings with constituents in my district. I want to give a shout out to our board representative, Devin Taliaferro, who's held community meetings as recently as this past week. I was sorry I wasn't there, but I've had repeated meetings with the parent groups at each of the schools that are proposed to be closed in my district. That's Woolslayer. There's 3 K through 5s proposed to be closed. One of them is on the borderline. It's technically in District 9. Friendship Elementary is on Friendship. I kind of represent 3 sides. I mean, the building is in Councilman Mosley's district, but I represent the constituents on almost all sides of it. And it is a magnet program that draws from both of our districts. And it's a magnificent building. There is a wait list for the building that is hundreds of kids long. There's on a lottery to get into the program. PPS wants to close and sell it. And Woolslayer in Lawrenceville and Fulton in Highland Park. All of these programs are full. And eliminate the K through 5 at the Arsenal building on Butler Street, another one in Lawrenceville. So there would only be 1 K through 5 left in District 7, which is up on Stanton Avenue. And so I have to note that, you know, my district has one of the highest real estate values across the city. And I think because the diocese has done it and the county has tried to do it and the city has tried to do it and now PPS is trying to do it, they're trying to use those buildings like a cash machine. And I don't think that's for the good of the system or the good of the kids or about realigning their curriculum or anything like that. I think they're just liquidating their assets, which, as we just had a very long discussion about, I think is always, always, always a bad idea. And so I've written letters, I have gone to meetings, and my constituents have certainly showed up and testified, and again, have been meeting with me. And so we have deep, deep concerns that even people from outside the district who are parents of kids in the system, that supposedly this restructuring plan is supposed to be helping equity for educational outcomes, even those parents who were supposedly the target of the benefit have concerns and don't believe that the restructuring plan is a restructuring plan to increase the educational outcomes. So it's distressing, to say the least. I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Any further? Councilman Cockill?
Just wanted to say, count me in any actions that you all want to take. I say all the time that people don't want to move to the city of Pittsburgh because of their water distribution or, you know, the roads and the infrastructure. We have many problems, but the number one reason, overwhelmingly for me, when my daughter being one of them, who just purchased a house in Dormont, was when they have small children, they want them to go to a safe, good school. And I didn't realize that all these other things are going on in other districts. And certainly, as you say, Councilman Gross, yeah, it would be, you know, it's hard to imagine why a school is doing so well, but they're going to put it up for sale because it's just a dynamite, you know, yeah, a lot of money for that school. So just count me in. I do believe it's the number one deterrent for young families to move to the city of Pittsburgh is because of our school system, period. So, and I'm a public school product, so, you know, I say that as, you know, experiencing it and proud of it, actually. But today, you know, we see issues, whether it's in Carrick High School, the stabbing that happened, or school shutting down, or you worried about people getting bused to their elementary school is, yeah, it's frustrating that we have no real say-so in that. But I would love to join your fight, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to echo the eloquence that's been shared around the table. I also want to thank Councilwoman Gross for her partnership and engaging with the communities that overlap, District 7 and District 9. And again, there's a lot of people that I have a ton of respect for that have been on the other side of this debate, who have gave myself and by extension Councilwoman Gross some heat for the letters and the advocacy that we've been doing and raising those concerns. You know, as a city that is looking to grow again, you know, my primary question remains is, like, you know, as a city that's looking to grow its population again and maybe finally turning the corner from the early 70s, you know, how can we continue on that path, you know, if we're closing schools and shrinking, you know, our school system? I know, you know, when I was at Perry, I think there was about 50,000 students in the system about 30 years ago. That was a few years after you, because when you left, Brashear was winning all the championships. Then when I got to Perry, we started winning all the championships. No disrespect to the Shinley Spartans, because the Shinley Spartans did get us my freshman year. We won state, but Samba Johnson and Bruce Fuller, and Marvin Randall and all those guys got us in the city championship game at Brashear, actually. But on a serious note, it is something that we do need to be engaged with, understanding the different lines of jurisdiction, and obviously we have to use our bully pulpit to engage the public around this issue. But again, I appreciate the advocacy that's around this table, and you bringing up Councilwoman Kell Smith. It's definitely something, even not that we don't have enough things to juggle right now. This is one other thing that we are going to have to take on. And show our leadership, particularly given the amount of anxiety that folks have around the city.
Thank you, Councilwoman Smith.
I'm just going to end it with, I came here before I organized two of the largest rallies in the state of Pennsylvania, and they were around education. I haven't lost my organizational skills and my organizing skills, and I will say that I'll have a lot of free time coming January, so look out, we're coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Warwick.
Yeah, I do want to say, just because I want to, just to, well, first of all, my four kids go to 3 different PPS schools, and soon to be, next year will be 4 different PPS schools. And I, just as a parent, I want to say, because I am very happy with the education that my kids are getting at PPS, very happy. They're all doing well, and they all enjoy their classes, and the school environment is wonderful in all cases. So I just think that here with this, with these, I think that there are parents who do appreciate PPS and tend to send their kids to PPS, and that is what I don't. That is where I fear that this plan is going to, could do damage around things that don't have anything to do with the quality of the education, with the quality of the schooling, right? That have to do with literally just the logistics of going to school, and if it's too hard to get your kids to school and get them home from school, that is, where you start looking elsewhere. And in light of that, I also believe that as the city of Pittsburgh, we do not do enough to make sure that our kids, to work with PPS and make sure that our kids in that out of school time have places that they can go, so that those parents, to ease the burden of parents, especially after school, right, and in the summertime, so that and I think that we are already starting a pilot with Director Vargas at Langley, and then and Mifflin will get geared up next to have our employees going into the school and working with the school. So I think that we too, as a council, can be doing much, much more, and as a city, and I hope that the incoming administration sees that opportunity, right? Because this, and under the previous administration, it was my understanding was, it was very antagonistic relationship with PPS. The relationship has gotten much better, but obviously they are going through this facilities program, which has been strenuous, right, for residents. But I do hope that going into the next administration, that desire to collaborate and expectation that we should be collaborating, and so that, throughout the day, right, from 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., that we've got those kids covered here in the city of Pittsburgh. So.
Thank you. Good points, Councilwoman Warwick. And I just want to make clear, any criticism I have of the public school system is not reflected on the teachers. I think the teachers are wonderful. My teachers were great. I still see them every once in a while. So the education they get there from the teachers that we have is first class. But the other things surrounding it may, keep people from going there. Violence, busing, you name it. And also, to your other point, I agree with that. providing more as a city for kids who are in school to have, outside recreation to do. That could be our responsibility, and I'd like to take a bigger role in that as well. I just wanted to point out what a wonderful party you had the other night, or they had for you. I've never been so invaded in my district from West Enders. About 200 of them, I think, came or so. But for those of us who were able to attend, really great night, and so much for going quietly for you. So I love.
I came in making noise. I'm going out making noise.
That's right.
In the parking lot, I was like, "What is? Are there like 12 events going on here?"
Yeah,
There's so many people in that parking
well, that's
lot.
whether it's the food festival there or a party for retirement party for the councilwoman, but she's very popular, and there was a lot of actually people from my district there as well. So she's appreciated all over the city, and we'll be probably having a few more parties and things for you too. So
No, that's
we'll have
okay.
time
I don't
to
want any more
reflect on
parties.
it. I know you didn't want this one either.
I'm going to be
I know.
honest. I didn't want one, but I want to thank Mrs. Bailey and everyone for everyone who came and everyone who helped organize it. Mrs. Bailey's going through her own health issues. Her daughter had a aneurysm, and she was in the hospital, and yet she managed to organize a party for me. I'm thinking,
I told
oh my
her
God.
she did such a great job. It was really well done. Just how you had people come up and speak. It was
Right.
really nice. So thanks.
Right. I know everybody wants to leave, so thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.